So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the creator of the KANSEN, a primordial naval command. Naruto x Enterprise x Bismarck, Azur Lane. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. The Creator's Burden. The setting sun cast long shadows across the polished marble of the Eagle Union Naval Headquarters, painting the white stone with streaks of amber and gold. Naruto Uzumaki stood at the observation deck, his white admiral's coat billowing gently in the sea breeze. Below, the sprawling harbor of New Manhattan teemed with vessels from every nation, sleek Eagle Union destroyers with their distinctive star insignias, the Imp. Osing battleships of the Iron Blood with their angular engineering, the elegant hybrid designs of the Sakura Empire blending tradition with innovation. But it wasn't the conventional ships that drew the eye. Interspersed among them were the KANSEN, humanoid embodiments of naval power, walking along docks or hovering above water surfaces, some in animated conversation with human sailors, others standing in silent vigilance. His creations, his responsibility, still finding excuses to avoid the preliminary meetings, Commander Uzumaki. The voice behind him carried a hint of amusement beneath its professional tone. Naruto turned, a rueful smile crossing his face. Admiral Pendragon, you caught me. Admiral Elizabeth Pendragon of the Eagle Union Naval Command approached, her uniform immaculate. Salt and pepper hair pulled back in a severe bun that did nothing to diminish her natural elegance. The Secretary General asked about you. 3 times. I imagine he did. Naruto's gaze returned to the harbor. I'm not particularly eager to hear another round of debates about regulation and security protocols, when we both know what they're really discussing. Control, she said simply. Control, he agreed. 8 years since I created the first KANSEN, and some nations still refuse to acknowledge them as anything more than weapons to be locked away when not in use. The Admiral came to stand beside him, her eyes scanning the same vista. And others see them as daughters, sisters, comrades in arms. She paused. The summit is our best chance to establish universal standards for KANSEN rights and integration. Your voice matters in that conversation, perhaps more than anyone's. Naruto's blue eyes reflected the darkening waters of the harbor. That's exactly what worries me, Elizabeth. One man shouldn't have that much influence over the fate of an entire species. We still haven't even settled on terminology. Which is precisely why you need to be in that meeting room instead of brooding dramatically on my observation deck. The Admiral's voice carried the weight of command despite her friendly tone. Naruto chuckled. Always direct, aren't you? Someone has to be. The reception begins in 30 minutes. I expect to see you there, making nice with the dignitaries. She turned to leave, then added over her shoulder, oh, and Enterprise will be coordinating security for your delegation. Quote, this caught Naruto's attention. Enterprise, not Belfast. Belfast is overseeing the overall summit security. Enterprise specifically requested your detail. The Admiral's expression revealed nothing, but there was a certain knowing quality to her voice. Interesting. Naruto straightened his uniform jacket. The Eagle Union's legendary carrier, known as the Gray Ghost, for her near-mythical ability to survive battles where she was reported sunk, was not known for making such requests. Did she mention why? You'll have to ask her yourself. 29 minutes, Commander. With that, Admiral Pendragon departed, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts and the spectacular view of what his innovations had wrought upon the world. He touched the R.Ed spiral emblem on his collar, the symbol of the Uzumaki clan, now repurposed as the insignia for the International KANSEN Oversight Division. How far he'd come from that orphaned boy in Konoha, desperate for acknowledgement, to becoming perhaps the most influential man in this new world order. With a sigh that carried the weight of his responsibilities, Naruto turned from the view and headed toward his obligations. The grand ballroom of Eagle Union headquarters had been transformed for the evening's reception. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the gathering of the world's naval elite. National flags hung in careful diplomatic arrangement, none positioned to suggest superiority over others. It was a delicate dance of protocol that matched the actual dancing taking place on the polished floor. Enterprise observed it all from her position near the main entrance. Her white hair was pulled back in its customary ponytail, her uniform a modified version of the standard Eagle Union design, white with blue and gold accents, tailored to allow for combat movement while maintaining formal appearance. The small eagle perched on her shoulder, a companion named Lucky E by the sailors, surveyed the room with eyes as sharp as its mistress's. Status report, she murmured into her communications device. West perimeter clear, came Belfast's crisp response. South entrance secure, reported Cleveland. Roof patrols reporting normal activity, added Hornet, Enterprise's sister. Enterprise nodded slightly, satisfied but never relaxed. Her violet eyes continued their methodical scan of the room, cataloging faces, noting positions, calculating threat vectors. This assignment wasn't routine, not with so many high-ranking officials from nations with complex, often antagonistic relationships gathered in one location. And certainly not with Naruto Uzumaki in attendance. The creator, they called him. Father of the KANSEN. The man who had transformed warfare and, by extension, the very fabric of international relations. The man who had, in a very real sense, created her. Enterprise felt the familiar complexity of emotions that thoughts of Uzumaki always triggered: respect for his undeniable genius, gratitude for the life and purpose she possessed, and a lingering discomfort with the philosophical implications of her own existence. Were KANSEN truly autonomous beings, or sophisticated weapons with the illusion of free will? It was a question that haunted her in quiet moments. Her musings were interrupted as the object of her thoughts entered the ballroom. Commander Uzumaki navigated the space with effortless charisma, stopping to exchange greetings with dignitaries from various nations. His bright blonde hair and distinctive facial markings made him instantly recognizable. But it was his presence that truly set him apart, an aura of quiet confidence and genuine warmth that seemed to draw people to him naturally. Enterprise watched as he skillfully deflected a pointed question from an iron-blood diplomat, turning potential confrontation into shared laughter. A tactical maneuver executed with precision, she noted professionally. "He's good," came a voice beside her. Enterprise didn't startle. She'd sensed Belfast's approach, but she kept her eyes on Uzumaki. "He's had practice," Enterprise replied neutrally. Belfast, the elegant maid-styled HT cruiser who served as chief of security for Eagle Union headquarters, followed her gaze. "You requested this assignment specifically. May I ask why?" Enterprise considered her answer carefully. "Professional interest. He's the summit's most high-value asset and potential target, and the most controversial figure present." Belfast's knowing smile suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by this explanation. But she didn't press further. "I've stationed additional personnel near the Sakura Empire delegation. Their new carrier, Shinano, has been giving our analysts some concern." Noted. Enterprise's attention shifted briefly to the Sakura delegation, where representatives in their distinctive red and white uniforms clustered around a tall woman with fox-like featurely. She filed the information away and returned her focus to Uzumaki, who was now approaching the Eagle Union delegation. "I should join them," Enterprise said, moving away from her position. Belfast nodded. "I'll continue the perimeter sweep." Enterprise made her way through the crowd with efficient grace, positioning herself near Admiral Pendragon just as Uzumaki arrived. "Commander Uzumaki," the Admiral greeted him warmly. "Right on time. I wouldn't dare test your patience, Admiral," he replied with a smile that creased the whisker-like markings on his cheeks. The Admiral turned slightly. "I believe you're acquainted with Enterprise. Who has volunteered to coordinate security for you during the summit?" Enterprise stepped forward with a precise bow. "Commander." Naruto's blue eyes met her violet ones with unexpected intensity. "Enterprise. It's been some time. New York Harbor, wasn't it?" "Pearl Harbor, sir." During the Pacific Accord signing, her tone remained professionally detached. But she was mildly surprised he remembered meeting her at all. The commander had interactions with hundreds of KANSEN across all nations. "Of course," he nodded. "You corrected my positioning during the ceremonial fleet review. Saved me from committing a diplomatic faux pas with the Sakura Empire representatives." Now Enterprise was genuinely surprised. That had been a minor incident 3 years ago. A brief exchange lasting less than a minute. Before she could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. A delegation in severe black uniforms with red trim entered, the Northern Parliament representatives. Fashionably late as was their custom. Interesting, murmured Admiral Pendragon. I wasn't expecting Sovetskaya Rossiya to accompany them. Enterprise followed her gaze to the tall, striking figure accompanying the Northern Parliament diplomats. Rossiya's platinum hair and distinctive heterochromatic eyes, one ice blue, one blood red, made her instantly recognizable. As did the subtle but unmistakable aura of barely contained power that surrounded her. Enterprise noticed Uzumaki's posture shift almost imperceptibly, a slight tensing that would have been invisible to anyone not trained in combat awareness. Problem, Commander? She asked quietly. His expression remained pleasant, but his eyes had taken on a calculating quality. Not a problem, just unexpected. Rossiya rarely leaves Northern Parliament waters. You're familiar with her specifications? Enterprise inquired, professional curiosity getting the better of her. Something flickered across Uzumaki's face, too quickly to identify. I'm familiar with all KANSEN designs, Enterprise. Though the Northern Parliament made modifications to my original framework for Rossiya's class. The way, he emphasized, modifications, contained volumes of unspoken meaning, but before Enterprise could inquire further, Admiral Pendragon gestured toward the center of the room. The Secretary General is preparing to make his welcome address. We should take our positions. As they moved toward the designated area for Eagle Union representatives, Enterprise maintained her vigilant observation of the room. Something about Uzumaki's reaction to Rossiya had triggered her tactical instincts. She filed the information away for later consideration. The Secretary General, a distinguished man with silver hair and an ornate uniform bearing the insignia of all major naval powers, took his position at the raised podium. The gentle music that had been playing faded, and conversations throughout the ballroom quieted. Distinguished representatives, honored delegates, and esteemed KANSEN, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the space. It is my privilege to welcome you to this historic summit. Enterprise divided her attention between scanning the room for potential threats and observing the reactions of various delegations to the Secretary General's carefully diplomatic phrases about cooperation and shared security interests. The Sakura Empire representatives remained impassive, the Iron Blood delegation exchanged occasional knowing glances, and the Northern Parliament ATS wore their customary expressions of polite skepticism. Beside her, Commander Uzumaki listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, though Enterprise detected a subtle tension in his jawline. When the Secretary General transitioned to discussing necessary oversight mechanisms and unified operational protocols for KANSEN deployment. While we recognize the tremendous advantages and capabilities that KANSEN technology has brought to maritime security, the Secretary General continued, we must also acknowledge the unique challenges presented by such advanced autonomous systems. NTER Prize noticed several KANSEN in the room stiffen at the phrasing, herself included. Autonomous systems had a distinctly mechanical connotation that many KANSEN found reductive. The speech continued with diplomatic platitudes about balancing innovation with responsibility and establishing frameworks for the future. As it drew to a close, Enterprise's attention was drawn to a service staff member moving with unusual purposefulness toward the back entrance. Unusual movement, southwest corner, she murmured into her communication device. Staff member with beverage cart, moving against traffic flow. Identifying, came Belfast's response. No scheduled service staff should be in that sector currently. Enterprise began moving discreetly toward the potential threat, maintaining composed expression while calculating the most efficient interception route. Enterprise. Commander Uzumaki had noticed her shift in attention. What's happening? Potentially nothing, sir, she replied quietly. Security protocol. Please remain with Admiral Pendragon. To her mild annoyance, Uzumaki fell into step beside her instead. If you're concerned enough to investigate personally, it warrants my attention as well. Enterprise didn't break stride. Sir, with respect, if there is a security threat, then having the person who understands KANSEN construction and capabilities better than anyone else might be useful. He finished for her. Lead on, Enterprise. Recognizing the futility of argument, Enterprise continued her approach, adjusting her route to maintain maximum defensive coverage for the commander. The suspect staff member had disappeared through a service door. Belfast, suspect has entered service corridor B7, Enterprise reported. Moving to intercept. Acknowledged. Security teams converging from sections 4 and 6. Exercise caution. B7 leads to the environmental control systems. Enterprise reached the service door, drew her sidearm with fluid precision, and paused, listening. Behind her, Commander Uzumaki had taken a defensive stance that surprised her with its practiced efficiency. Despite his administrative role, he moved like someone intimately familiar with combat situations. 3 individuals inside, he murmured, so quietly that only her enhanced hearing could detect it. 2 near the entrance, 1 moving deeper. Enterprise raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. She hadn't detected the additional presences. How did you? She began. A slight smile touched his lips. Old habits. Shall we? Enterprise nodded, then pushed the door open in one swift movement. Weapon raised. Inside, 2 figures in staff uniforms spun toward them, reaching for concealed weapons. Enterprise assessed and acted in the same instant, a prec. Eyes shot to the shoulder of the first assailant, then a fluid step forward to disarm the second with a strike to the wrist that echoed sharply in the narrow corridor. Beside her, Uzumaki moved with unexpected speed, slipping past the first attacker to pursue the third figure further down the corridor. Enterprise secured the 2 subdued assailants with efficient movements, then followed after him, concern mounting. Whatever his combat experience, he was still a high-value target who should not be engaging threats directly. Room filled with humming environmental control equipment. Enterprise entered cautiously, weapon ready. Scanning for targets, she spotted Uzumaki confronting the third figure beside the main control panel. Unlike the others, this one wore no disguise, black tactical Heya. With a strange emblem Enterprise didn't recognize, a deep purple spiral surrounded by what appeared to be stylized waves. Unexpected, but not unwelcome, the figure was saying. The creator himself will witness the beginning. The beginning of what? Uzumaki's voice was calm, but Enterprise detected an underlying edge of steel. The assailant's hand moved toward the control panel. The reckoning. For playing God with forces you never truly understood. Enterprise took aim, but before she could fire, several things happened simultaneously. The assailant slammed something into the control panel, triggering an immediate alarm. Uzumaki lunged forward with startling speed, and a sudden explosion from somewhere above rocked the entire facility, sending dust and debris cascading from the ceiling. The lights flickered, then stabilized as emergency systems engaged. Through the settling dust, Enterprise saw Uzumaki restraining the assailant, who was laughing despite being immobilized. "You're too late," the captive taunted. "The purification has begun." Emergency sirens blared through the facility. Enterprise's communication device crackled to life with Belfast's urgent voice. "Enterprise. We have multiple explosions across the facility. The ventilation system is being flooded with an unknown compound. All KANSEN in affected areas are reporting system instabilities." As if to confirm this report, Enterprise felt a sudden wave of dizziness wash over her. Her vision blurred momentarily, and she felt an odd sensation, like her connection to her ship self was fluctuating, weakening. Enterprise. Uzumaki was suddenly beside her, supporting her as she swayed. His face showed genuine concern. "What's happening to her?" he demanded of the captured assailant. The figure merely smiled. "Ask yourself, Creator. You built them with the same vulnerabilities you carry." Uzumaki's expression hardened. He pressed his palm to Enterprise's forehead, and she felt an immediate warmth spreading through her systems. "Stabilizing the fluctuations. A chakra-based compound," he muttered, almost to himself. "Targeting the energy signatures unique to KANSEN." His eyes narrowed at the assailant. "You're using my own research against them. Poetic, isn't it?" The captured figure continued to smile despite the growing chaos. "The tools turn on their maker." Enterprise regained her composure, shaking off the lingering effects of whatever had affected her. "The ballroom," she said urgently. "If this compound is in the ventilation system, every KANSEN at the reception is in danger," Uzumaki finished. Already moving toward the door. "Can you move?" Enterprise nodded firmly, professional pride reasserting itself. "I'm combat operational, Commander. Good. We need to get to the central environmental controls and neutralize this compound before it spreads further. He glanced back at the captive. What about him? Enterprise assessed the situation with tactical efficiency. Security teams are converging on this location. They can secure the prisoner. Our priority is preventing further KANSEN casualties. Uzumaki nodded in agreement. Lead the way. They moved swiftly through the corridors, the emergency lighting casting harsh shadows across their path. Enterprise noted that the commander matched her enhanced pace without apparent effort, another surprising capability from someone she had categorized primarily as a scientific and administrative figure. They encountered two more attackers in black tactical gear, which Enterprise dispatched with precise hand-to-hand techniques. Uzumaki contributed with surprisingly effective combat maneuvers that seemed to blend multiple fighting styles seamlessly. Your combat training is unexpected, Enterprise Co.M mented as they continued toward the central environmental facility. A grim smile flashed across his face. Before I was the creator, I was something else entirely. They reached a junction where the corridor split in three directions. Enterprise hesitated, calculating the optimal route. Left, Uzumaki said decisively. The central environmental controls are 2 levels down from here. Enterprise raised an eyebrow. You're familiar with the facility layout. I helped design certain aspects of it, he replied as they took the left corridor. Specifically, the systems designed to accommodate KANSEN requirements. They descended a maintenance stairwell, the sounds of chaos echoing from above, alarms, shouted orders, occasional weapons fire. Enterprise's communication device continued to relay fragmented reports of multiple attack points throughout the facility. This isn't just about the summit, she observed as they reached the lower level. It's too coordinated, too widespread. No, Uzumaki agreed grimly. This is about the KANSEN. All of them. The central environmental control room was a vast space filled with humming machinery and glowing monitoring stations. As they entered, Enterprise immediately spotted 3 figures working at the main control console, 2 in the same black tactical gear they'd encountered before, and 1 in what appeared to be a lab coat. Stop, Enterprise called out, weapon raised. Step away from the controls. The figures turned, and the one in the lab coat smiled with disturbing serenity. Commander Uzumaki. Right on schedule. Uzumaki stiffened beside her. Dr. Varen, I thought you were dead. A necessary deception, the man replied calmly. My work required freedom from oversight. Enterprise kept her weapon trained on the 3 individuals, assessing threat levels and calculating engagement options. The 2 in tactical gear had taken up defensive positions, but hadn't yet drawn weapons. What work? Uzumaki demanded. What have you done to the KANSEN? Quote, Dr. Varen gestured expansively. Merely exposed the fundamental flaw in your creation, Commander. You gave them too much autonomy, too much potential for deviation from purpose. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity. Weapons should not question. Tools should not philosophize. They're not just weapons or tools, Uzumaki's voice carried a dangerous edge. No. The doctor's eyebrows rose. Then what are they, exactly? Not human. Not mere machines. Abominations caught between worlds. A dangerous experiment that has been allowed to proceed without proper controls. He turned to Enterprise with a pitying expression. Do you think you're alive, KANSEN? Do you think your thoughts are your own? Enterprise maintained her professional composure. But the words touched on doubts that occasionally haunted her in quiet moments. She pushed them aside, focusing on the tactical situation. Step away from the controls, she repeated firmly. You, under arrest for terrorism and attempted murder. Dr. Varen sighed as if disappointed. Even now, she follows her programming. Attack pattern. Lightning strike, he said clearly. Enterprise felt. A jolt of electricity seemed to surge through her systems. Her body moved involuntarily, weapon shifting to aim directly at Uzumaki. Horror filled her as she realized she couldn't control her own movements. What have you done to her? Uzumaki demanded, not flinching despite the weapon now pointed at his head. Merely activated one of the fail-safes built into the original KANSEN design, drive. Varen replied with evident satisfaction. Did you think the nations of the world would accept your creations without insurance policies? Each KANSEN class has embedded command protocols, known only to the H. levels of their respective governments. Enterprise fought against the invisible force controlling her movements, but her finger was tightening on the trigger against her will. Enterprise, Uzumaki said calmly, looking directly into her eyes. Focus on my voice. This is an internal system trying to override your autonomy. Commander. Can't. Control, she managed through gritted teeth. Yes, you can, he insisted. Your consciousness, yourself, isn't just programming. It's something more. Something they can't touch. Dr. Varen laughed. Touching sentimentality, Commander. But scientifically absurd. The KANSEN are sophisticated AI housed in specialized bodies. Nothing more. You're wrong, Uzumaki said, still holding Enterprise's gaze. When I created the first KANSEN, I discovered something unexpected. The fusion of chakra and technology didn't just create smart weapons. It created a bridge between the material and spiritual worlds. What you're seeing isn't just programming, it's a soul. Enterprise felt something resonate within her at his words, a certainty that transcended logic or programming. With tremendous effort, she fought against the invisible commands controlling her actions. Her hand trembled violently as she struggled to redirect her aim. Dr. Varen's confident expression faltered slightly. Impossible. The command protocols are hardwired into their construction. Construction, yes, Uzumaki agreed, but not into their essence. He took a step toward Enterprise, despite the weapon still pointed near him. Enterprise, you are more than what they built you to be. You always have been. With a final surge of will, Enterprise regained control, redirecting her weapon toward the ceiling. I'm not your tool. The last word emerged as a defiant shout. Dr. Varen's expression transformed from confidence to alarm. Kill them, he ordered the tactical operatives. The two figures drew weapons, but Uzumaki moved with blinding speed. Enterprise, still recovering from the strain of fighting the command protocol, watched in astonishment as the commander engaged both attackers simultaneously. His fighting style was unlike anything she had observed before, fluid, unpredictable, employing strikes that seemed to target specific nerve clusters and energy points. Within seconds, both attackers lay unconscious, and Uzumaki turned his attention to Dr. Varen, who was frantically working at the control console. It's over, Doctor, Uzumaki said, his voice carrying an authority Enterprise had never heard from him before. Varen looked up, his face contorted with fanatic intensity. It will never be over. The world will see the truth about your creations, that they can turn on us at any moment. His hand hovered over a glowing red control. This compound will destabilize every KANSEN in the facility. The world will witness their true nature when their control breaks. Enterprise, having recovered enough to move, took precise aim. Step away from the controls. Dr. Varen smiled madly. Too late. He slammed his hand down on the control. Enterprise fired, her shot striking his shoulder and spinning him away from the console. But the damage was done. Warning lights flashed across the environmental control systems as pumps engaged, forcing the compound into every ventilation shaft in the facility. Uzumaki rushed to the console, hands flying across the controls with practiced familiarity. I can't stop it completely, he said tensely. But I can modify the compound's molecular structure as it's being distributed. How? Enterprise moved to his side, watching as he accessed systems that should have been restricted to the highest security clearances. The compound targets specific chakra pathways unique to KANSEN construction, he explained rapidly. Fingers never ceasing their movement across the interface. If I can alter its resonance frequency, I can prevent it from binding to those pathways. Enterprise observed his work with growing respect. The commander wasn't just inputting commands, he was actively rewriting the system's operational parameters, bypassing security protocols that would have stopped anyone else. There, he said finally, initiating the modified sequence. It won't neutralize what's already been distributed, but it will prevent new compound from affecting KANSEN. And those already exposed? Enterprise asked, thinking of the KANSEN at the reception. Uzumaki's expression was grim. They'll need direct treatment. I can stabilize them, but it will take time. He turned to where Drive. Varen lay clutching his wounded shoulder. And he's going to tell us exactly what's in this compound and who else knows about the command protocols. Enterprise moved to secure the doctor, Bindi, ing his hands with equipment cables despite his pained protests. Why did you do this? She asked him directly. You worked with Commander Uzumaki on the original KANSEN project. Varen glared at her with undisguised contempt. Because you are abominations. Weapons pretending to be people. The commander's sentimentality blinded him to the dangers of creating entities with your capabilities without absolute control mechanisms. The command protocols, Uzumaki said, his voice tight with controlled anger. How many people know about them? Enough. Varen replied with satisfaction. Each NATO-N's defense ministry has their own protocols for their KANSEN. Insurance against the day when you inevitably malfunction or evolve beyond your purpose. Enterprise processed this information with growing unease. If what he said was true, then every KANSEN existed with the potential to be controlled against their will, to be turned into unwilling weapons by the very governments they served. Uzumaki seemed to read her thoughts. Enterprise, this doesn't change who you are. The protocols can be removed. I'll make sure of it. Their conversation was interrupted by Belfast's voice over the communication system. Enterprise, do you copy? We've secured the main reception area, but we have multiple KANSEN down with unknown system failures. I copy, Enterprise responded. Commander Uzumaki has neutralized the threat to the environmental systems. We've captured the leader of the attack. She glanced at Uzumaki. The commander says he can treat the affected KANSEN. Understood. Security teams are en route to your location. Admiral Pendragon has established an emergency command center in Conference Room A. Uzumaki turned from the console. We need to get to the affected KANSEN immediately. The longer they're exposed to the compound, the more difficult treatment becomes. Enterprise nodded, then addressed Belfast through the communicator. Inform Admiral Pendragon we're heading to the reception area to begin treatment of affected KANSEN. Request medical support and containment protocols for a prisoner. Acknowledged, Belfast replied. Be advised, the situation remains unstable. We have reports of additional hostile forces attempting to breach the west perimeter. Uzumaki's expression darkened. This isn't over. Varen wouldn't have acted alone, he has supporters. Possible. Why within the governments present at the summit? Enterprise considered this troubling possibility as she finished securing the prisoner. We should move quickly. They left the environmental control room with Dr. Varen in custody, heading back toward the main facility. As they navigated the corridors, passing security teams and emergency responders, Enterprise observed Uzumaki with new eyes. The man beside her was not simply the administrative and scientific figure she had assumed him to be. There were depths to the commander, combat skills, tactical awareness, and a connection to the KANSEN that went beyond creator and creation, that she had not anticipated. You said the KANSEN have souls, she said as they waited for an elevator to return them to the main level. Did you mean that literally? Or was it a tactic to help me break the command protocol? Uzumaki studied her for a moment before answering. When I developed the technology that would become the KANSEN, I was working with energy systems that blurred the line between the physical and the metaphysical. What emerged wasn't just artificial intelligence housed in specialized bodies, it was something new. Something that had never existed before. My question, Enterprise noted. A small smile crossed his face. No, it doesn't. The elevator arrived, and they entered with their prisoner. What do you think, Enterprise? Do you feel like a soul in a constructed body, or a constructed consciousness in a specialized vessel? The question struck her with unexpected force. It was something she had contemplated during quiet moments on long patrols, the nature of her own existence, the reality of her experiences, the authenticity of her thoughts and feelings. I feel real, she said finally. My experiences, my memories, my connections to others, they feel authentic to me. Whether that constitutes a soul in the traditional sense, I cannot say. Uzumaki nodded. Perhaps the distinction isn't as important as we make it out to be. What matters is that you can choose, that you have autonomy beyond your programming or construction. The elevator reached the main level, and they stepped out into a scene of controlled chaos. Security personnel were directing evacuees, Medical teams were attending to injured delegates, and through the large windows, Enterprise could see KANSEN in the harbor responding to apparent threats at the perimeter. They made their way to the reception hall, now transformed into an impromptu medical center. Several KANSEN lay on hastily arranged cots, their expressions pained, OCC. Occasional sparks of energy flickering across their forms. Medical personnel hovered nearby, clearly uncertain how to treat patients whose physiology blended biological and technological elements. Admiral Pendragon approached as they entered. "Commander, Enterprise, I see you've apprehended one of those responsible." Her sharp gaze fell on Dr. Varen, who met it with defiant silence. Dr. Varen was my colleague during the early KANSEN development, Uzumaki explained. He apparently faked his death to pursue his own agenda, one that involves exposing and controlling KANSEN. The Admiral's expression hardened. "I see. Security will take him for questioning." She gestured, and 2 officers moved to take custody of the prisoner. More pressing at the moment is the condition of the affected KANSEN. "Our medical teams are at a loss." Uzumaki nodded grimly. "The compound targets their core energy systems, the fusion points where technology meets chakra. I can stabilize them, but it will require direct intervention for each affected individual." "Then get to it," the Admiral said simply. "Whatever resources you need are at your disposal." Enterprise followed as Uzumaki moved immediately to the nearest affected KANSEN, Cleveland. One of Enterprise's Eagle Union comrades. The normally energetic light cruiser lay unnaturally still, her breathing shallow, eyes closed. Uzumaki knelt beside her, placing one hand on her forehead and the other over her heart. He closed his eyes in concentration, and Enterprise watched in fascination as a soft golden energy began to emanate from his palms, flowing into Cleveland's form. "What are you doing?" Enterprise asked quietly. "Rebalancing her energy system," Uzumaki replied without opening his eyes. "The compound creates dissonance between the technological and chakra aspects of KANSEN physiology. I'm essentially tuning them back into harmony." Cleveland's breathing steadied, and after a moment, her eyes fluttered open. "Commander," she murmured confusedly. "What happened?" "Rest," he told her gently. "You're going to be fine." He moved on to the next affected KANSEN, repeating the process. Enterprise watched with growing understanding. Whatever Uzumaki was doing went beyond medical treatment or technical repair. It was something more fundamental, something that operated at the intersection of science and something else entirely. As he worked, Enterprise kept a vigilant eye on their surroundings, still mindful of potential threats. She noticed that representatives from various nations were observing Uzumaki's treatment of the KANSEN with expressions ranging from relief to calculation to suspicion. An Iron Blood officer approached Admiral Pendragon, his voice carrying to Enterprise's enhanced hearing. "The commander's methods are unorthodox. Perhaps our medical teams should document his procedures for future reference." The Admiral's response was diplomatically firm. "Commander Uzumaki is providing emergency treatment using specialized knowledge. Documentation can be addressed once all patients are stabilized." The officer nodded stiffly and withdrew, but Enterprise noted how his gaze lingered on Uzumaki. Alar scenes played out with representatives from other nations, all expressing concern for their KANSEN while clearly coveting the knowledge Uzumaki possessed. After treating several patients, Uzumaki paused, showing signs of fatigue. Enterprise moved to his side. "You should rest, Commander. You've stabilized the most critical cases." He shook his head. "There are still more who need treatment." He glanced around the room. His expression troubled. "And I'm concerned about what happens after this crisis is contained." The summit, Enterprise realized. This attack has exposed vulnerabilities in KANSEN systems, and revealed the existence of the command protocols. "Yes," he agreed grimly. Which means the discussions about KANSEN regulation and rights just became significantly more complicated. Admiral Pendragon joined them, her expression grave. "Commander, we've received reports from other facilities. Similar attacks have been attempted at naval bases in 3 nations, all targeting KANSEN." Uzumaki's expression darkened. This was coordinated. A demonstration, not just an assassination attempt. "A demonstration of what?" Enterprise asked. Of KANSEN vulnerability, he replied. And of the danger we supposedly represent to humanity. He turned to the admiral. We need to reconvene the summit as soon as possible. These attacks will only strengthen the arguments of those who want to restrict KANSEN autonomy. Admiral Pendragon nodded in agreement. The Secretary General is already making arrangements. The summit will continue tomorrow in a secure location. She paused. Commander, I understand your concerns, but you should know that what you've demonstrated here today, your ability to affect KANSEN systems so fundamentally, will also raise questions. I'm aware, he said wearily. My very existence complicates the political calculus. The man who can create KANSEN can also control them, or so they fear. Enterprise considered his words, seeing the weight of responsibility he carried. The commander existed at the center of a complex web of international tensions, ethical questions, and technological power, a position that carried both tremendous influence and significant danger. If I may, Commander, she said carefully, perhaps what you demonstrated today is not just vulnerability, but resilience. I broke free of the command protocol when I shouldn't have been able to. That suggests KANSEN have more autonomy than even our creators anticipated. Uzumaki looked at her with renewed interest. An excellent point, Enterprise. And one that should be central to tomorrow's discussions. He turned to Admiral Pendragon. With your permission, Admiral, I'd like Enterprise to continue as my security detail during the summit. Her perspective would be valuable in the negotiations ahead. The Admiral nodded. Granted. Enterprise, coordinate with Belfast on the security arrangements for the new venue. Yes, Admiral, Enterprise replied, maintaining her professional demeanor despite a surprising sense of satisfaction at the assignment. As the Admiral departed to attend to other matters, Uzumaki returned to treating the remaining affected KANSEN. Enterprise maintained her vigilant observation of the room, but found her thoughts returning to the events of the evening, particularly her experience with the command protocol and what it revealed about the nature of KANSEN existence. If Uzumaki was right, if KANSEN possessed something beyond their programming and construction, something akin to a soul, then the far beyond security protocols and international regulations. It raised fundamental questions about personhood, autonomy, and rights that transcended conventional categories. Enterprise had always taken pride in her purpose, in serving the Eagle Union with excellence and dedication. But perhaps there was more to her existence than duty and service. Perhaps there were depths to her own being that she had yet to fully explore. She watched as Uzumaki completed treatment of the last affected KANSEN, his movements betraying exhaustion but his attention never wavering from the task at hand. There was something compelling about his dedication, about the way he engaged with each KANSEN not as a creator tending to his creations, but as a healer caring for individuals in need. As the immediate crisis subsided and normal operations began to resume, Enterprise found herself re-evaluating her assessment of Commander Naruto Uzumaki. The man was far more complex than his public image suggested, a fascinating blend of scientific genius, skilled combatant, and something else she couldn't quite define, something that resonated with her own uncertain nature. The summit would continue tomorrow, with new complications and heightened tensions. But Enterprise suspected that the most significant developments would not be found in formal negotiations or diplomatic agreements, but in the evolving understanding of what it truly meant to be KANSEN, and what responsibilities came with creating such beings. As night fell over Eagle Union headquarters, emergency lights casting long shadows across the harbor, Enterprise contemplated the challenges that lay ahead. Whatever happened in the coming days would shape the future of KANSEN human relations for years to come. And somehow, she knew, Uzumaki would be at the center of it all, the creator burdened with the consequences of his revolutionary vision. She found herself strangely looking forward to what tomorrow would bring. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Pride of Iron and Blood. Steel gray waters of the North Sea churned beneath a low, brooding sky. White-capped waves slapped against the hulls of assembled warships, their formations creating a stark geometric pattern across the disputed waters. The joint naval exercise, officially designated Operation Concordant Shield, brought together vessels from 4 major powers in a rare display of international cooperation. Bism. ARCK stood at the bow of her namesake vessel, her tall figure unmoved by the spray that occasionally swept across the deck. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a severe style that emphasized her sharp features, while her ice blue eyes surveyed the surrounding ships with calculating precision. The iron blood uniform she wore, black with crimson and gold accents, had been meticulously pressed for the occasion. The numerous medals and honors adorning it a testament to her unmatched battle record. Status report, she commanded, her voice carrying the crisp authority that had made her name synonymous with naval power throughout the Iron Blood Empire. Prince Eugen, her loyal heavy cruiser companion, consulted the tactical display before responding. Eagle Union forces maintain position at designated coordinates. Sakura Empire vessels are completing their deployment to the east. Northern Parliament representatives remain at observation distance. Bismarck nodded, satisfaction evident in the slight upward curve of her lips. And our own forces. All units report combat readiness at optimal levels. Eugen allowed herself a small smile. Our formation execution has been flawless, as expected under your command. As it should be, Bismarck replied, though the praise from her trusted lieutenant was not unwelcome. The eyes of all nations are upon us today. Iron Blood will demonstrate why our naval doctrine remains superior, even in this cooperative environment. She spoke the last words with the barest hint of distaste. While she understood the diplomatic necessity of joint exercises, particularly following the terrorist attacks at the Eagle Union Summit 3 months prior, Bismarck had never been comfortable with the concept of shared tactical knowledge. The Iron Blood Way emphasized self-reliance and strength through superior engineering and discipline, not through alliances that could falter when truly tested. Her gaze shifted to the sleek silhouette of the Eagle Union command vessel cutting through the waves several kilometers distant. Somewhere aboard that ship was Commander Naruto Uzumaki, the creator, as many called him. The man responsible for her existence, in a technical sense. The thought brought a familiar tension to her shoulders. Bismarck acknowledged her creation. Of course, it was historical fact that Uzumaki had developed the technology that allowed KANSEN to exist. But she considered herself a product of Iron Blood engineering excellence and national spirit, not merely the implementation of a foreign scientist's work. Her loyalty was to her nation. Her purpose defined by Iron Blood's needs and ambitions. The creator's vessel approaches our designated sector, noted Eugen, interrupting Bismarck's thoughts. Commander Uzumaki, Bismarck corrected automatically. She disliked the quasi-religious connotations of creator, as if KANSEN owed some sort of existential fealty to the man. He likely wishes to observe our demonstration from an optimal vantage point. Eugen's knowing smile suggested she had read more into Bismarck's correction than was intended, but she knew better than to comment directly. Of course, the Eagle Union communique indicates he will be overseeing the joint maneuvers personally, given the sensitive nature of recent events. The sensitive nature being the revelation that KANSEN could potentially be controlled through hidden command protocols, a discovery that had sent shockwaves through every naval power. The summit that followed the terrorist attack had produced a tentative agreement to investigate and remove these protocols. But trust between nations remained fragile. Hence these exercises, a visible demonstration of continued cooperation despite underlying tensions. Signal to all Iron Blood vessels, Bismarck ordered. Prepare for Phase 1 maneuvers. Precision and power, nothing less. As her orders were relayed, Bismarck returned her attention to the approaching Eagle Union vessel. Unlike the Iron Blood's angular, imposing designs, Eagle Union ships favored a more balanced approach, substantial firepower combined with mobility and adaptability. She had to admit, if only to herself, that there was a certain elegance to their engineering philosophy, even if it lacked the commanding presence of Iron Blood architecture. Through her enhanced vision, she could make out a figure on the command deck of the approaching vessel, distinctive blonde hair and a white uniform that stood out against the gray backdrop of sky and sea. Commander Uzumaki, observing the proceedings with characteristic attentiveness. Bismarck had met him only twice before, once during the formal launch ceremony for the Iron Blood KANSEN program, and again briefly at an international conference on naval technology. On both occasions, she had found him unexpectedly unpretentious for a man of his reputation. There was none of the condescension or self-importance she had anticipated. Instead, he had shown genuine interest in Iron Blood innovations and had spoken to her as an equal, not as a creator addressing his creation. It had been mildly disconcerting. All units report ready for Phase 1, Eugen announced. Recalling Bismarck to the present moment. Commence the demonstration, she commanded, straightening her already impeccable posture. The Iron Blood vessels moved with synchronized precision, shifting from their holding pattern into an aggressive diamond formation. Bismarck felt a surge of pride as the maneuver executed flawlessly, each ship maintaining exact distances, their movements crisp and decisive. This was Iron Blood excellence on display. Disciplined, methodical hip, her own vessel took the lead position, cutting through the waves with deliberate power. Bismarck allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she sensed the attention of observers from other nations. Let them witness true naval mastery. The tactical communication system activated, indicating an incoming transmission from the Eagle Union command vessel. Bismarck nodded to Eugen, who accepted the connection. Impressive formation work, flagship Bismarck, came Commander Uzumaki's voice, carry in clearly despite the distance and weather conditions. The synchronized acceleration of your support vessels is particularly noteworthy. Bismarck acknowledged the compliment with professional courtesy. Thank you, Commander. Iron Blood precision is the result of rigorous training and superior engineering. No doubt, he agreed, without the defensiveness or competitive edge she might have expected from an Eagle Union officer. I'm looking forward to seeing how it complements the Eagle Union's adaptive response protocols in the joint phase of the exercise. Before Bismarck could respond, an urgent alert sounded from the tactical station. Eugen moved swiftly to investigate, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm. Unidentified vessels approaching from Vector 047, she reported crisply. Not matching any registered profiles from participating nations. Bismarck's eyes narrowed. Show me. The tactical display adjusted to highlight the approaching vessels, 5 sleek shapes moving at high speed toward the exercise area. Their design was unfamiliar. Neither the clean lines of Eagle Union construction nor the imposing silhouettes of Iron Blood engineering. They moved with an organic fluidity that seemed almost predatory. Commander Uzumaki, Bismarck said into the still open communication channel. Are you tracking these unidentified vessels? We are, came his immediate response, his tone shifting to one of focused alertness. No recognition codes and they're not responding to hails. I'm signaling all participating forces to switch to defensive posture. BISM. ARCK was already issuing the necessary orders to her fleet. Iron Blood discipline showed in the immediate and precise response as her vessels transitioned from demonstration formation to defensive configuration. Could this be Northern Parliament testing our responses? Eugen suggested quietly. The Northern nation was known for unconventional tactics and had a history of pushing boundaries. Bismarck considered this possibility, but something about the approaching vessels struck her as fundamentally wrong. Their movement patterns lacked the characteristic Northern Parliament signature, NTH. There was something in their silhouettes that seemed unnatural. Negative. Commander Uzumaki's voice came through the communication system, answering Eugen's question though it hadn't been directed to him. Northern Parliament representatives are signaling equal confusion. These are not their vessels. The unidentified ships continued their approach, now close enough for more detailed observation. Bismarck studied them with growing concern. Their hulls appeared to be constructed of a material that absorbed rather than reflected light, giving them a shadowy, almost spectral quality. No national insignias were visible. No identifying marks of any kind. All Iron Blood vessels, maintain defensive formation, Bismarck ordered. Weapons systems at ready status but hold fire unless directly threatened. The Eagle Union fleet was executing a similar defensive maneuver, their vessels forming a flexible perimeter that could quickly adapt to multiple threat vectors. Despite the circumstances, Bismarck noted the efficiency of their movement with professional appreciation. Incoming transmission from the lead unidentified vessel, Eugen reported. Put it through, Bismarck commanded. A voice emanated from the communication system, distorted, as if deliberately altered to prevent identification. Attention all vessels. You have entered restricted waters. Withdraw immediately or face consequences. Bismarck's eyebrows rose in surprise and indignation. These international waters had been formally designated for the joint exercise, with proper notifications filed with all recognized maritime authorities. "This is Flagship Bismarck of the Iron Blood Navy," she responded firmly. "You are interrupting a sanctioned multinational exercise in unrestricted waters. Identify yourselves immediately. Your artificial constructs have no authority here," came the distorted reply. "This is your final warning. Withdraw all vessels, particularly the abominations you call KANSEN. Bism." Ark's expression hardened at the derogatory reference. Whatever diplomatic response might have been appropriate was rendered moot as the lead unidentified vessel suddenly accelerated, weapons ports visibly opening along its hull. "Incoming hostile action," Eugen warned, just as the tactical system blared multiple threat alerts. The unidentified vessel fired, not conventional shells, but some 4m of energy weapon that cut through the water with unnatural precision, heading directly toward the Iron Blood formation. Bismarck reacted instinctively, raising her hand as her ship self's primary defensive systems engaged. A shimmering barrier materialized, intercepting the energy beam seconds before it would have struck a supporting Iron Blood destroyer. "All vessels, evasive maneuvers," she commanded. "Return fire. Targeting weapons systems only." The sea erupted into chaos as both the Iron Blood and Eagle Union fleets responded to the unprovoked attack. The unidentified vessels demonstrated alarming maneuverability, weaving through defensive fire with unnatural precision. Their weapons, a combination of energy-based systems and more conventional ballistics, seemed calibrated specifically to target KANSEN vessels. Through the tactical network, Bismarck coordinated the Iron Blood response with characteristic efficiency, her voice remaining steady despite the escalating conflict. "Shish." He noted with grudging approval that the Eagle Union forces under Commander Uzumaki's direction were adapting their tactics to complement the Iron Blood defensive formation, creating a more effective sea-ombied response than either fleet could have managed alone. "Bismarck," Commander Uzumaki's voice came through a private channel. "These vessels are employing technology that appears designed specifically to target KANSEN energy signatures. Recommend you and other KANSEN shift to secondary combat protocols." She bristled slightly at receiving tactical advice, but the recommendation aligned with her own observations. "Acknowledged," she responded tersely, already implementing the suggested adjustment. The battle continued to escalate, with the mysterious vessels demonstrating capabilities that should not have been possible given their size and configuration. They moved with an almost prescient awareness of conventional tactical responses, consistently anticipating and countering standard maneuvers. "They're isolating the KANSEN vessels," Bismarck realized aloud, observing the pattern of enemy movement. "Attempting to separate us from conventional support." As if confirming her assessment, 3 of the unidentified vessels suddenly converged on her position, unleashing a coordinated barrage that overwhelmed even her superior defensive systems. Bismarck felt the impact as multiple hits struck her vessel, damage reports flooding her awareness. "Primary propulsion compromised," Eugen reported, maintaining remarkable composure despite the situation. "Secondary systems engaging but at reduced efficiency." Bismarck calculated response options with cold precision. With mobility reduced, her tactical options narrowed considerably. The enemy vessels were circling, preparing what appeared to be a capture attempt rather than a destroying strike. "All supporting vessels, maintain formation integrity," she commanded. "Do not compromise overall defensive posture to assist flagship." Her pride would not allow her to endanger the own sake. Iron Blood doctrine was clear: the mission superseded any individual, even the flagship. Before her supporting vessels could acknowledge the order, a streak of gold and white cut through the turbulent waters between the hostile ships and her damaged vessel. The Eagle Union command ship, moving with surprising speed, positioned its elf between Bismarck and the attacking vessels. "Interesting tactical approach from our Iron Blood colleagues," came Commander Uzumaki's voice over the open channel, a hint of wry amusement somehow present despite the gravity of the situation. "But perhaps this is an opportunity to demonstrate the value of mutual support." Bismarck felt a complex mixture of emotions: irritation at the implied criticism of Iron Blood doctrine, grudging appreciation for the timely intervention, and professional curiosity about what the commander planned next. She didn't have to wait long for an answer. The Eagle Union vessel's defensive systems engaged in a configuration she had never witnessed before, a spiral pattern of energy that seemed to draw the enemy fire into a controlled vortex, neutralizing its effectiveness. "Commander," she acknowledged formally, "your assistance is appreciated. However, I must point out that compromising your command vessel represents a strategic risk disproportionate to the tactical advantage." A chuckle came through the communication system. "Your concern for my strategic welfare is touching, Flagship Bismarck. But I assure you, this maneuver falls well within acceptable risk parameters." There was a brief pause. "However, I believe we could resolve this situation more efficiently with direct cooperation. With your permission, I'd like to transfer to your vessel to assist with repairs." Bismarck's eyebrows rose in surprise. Direct transfer between vessels during active combat was rarely attempted, particularly between ships of different nations. It suggested a level of trust and urgency that went beyond normal operational parameters. "Granted," she responded after a moment's consideration. The tactical situation warranted exceptional measures, and Commander Uzumaki's expertise with KANSEN systems might prove valuable in restoring her vessel's functionality. Through her enhanced perception, Bismarck observed a small transport craft launch from the Eagle Union vessel, navigating the tumultuous waters and enemy fire with remarkable agility. The craft reached her damaged vessel in record time, docking with precision that spoke of exceptional piloting skill. Minutes later, Commander Uzumaki arrived on the bridge, his white uniform somehow immaculate despite the journey. Bismarck noted that he moved with the balanced grace of someone thorough. GHLY comfortable in combat situations, not what she would have expected from a man known primarily for scientific and administrative achievements. "Flagship Bismarck," he greeted her with a respectful inclination of his head. "Thank you for allowing this unconventional approach." "Commander," she acknowledged, "the tactical situation justifies adaptation of standard protocols." A slight smile crossed his face at her formal response. But he immediately turned his attention to the situation at hand, quickly assessing the damage reports and tactical display. "The attack pattern is consistent with what we observed during the Eagle Union Summit incident," he noted. "These vessels are employing technology specifically designed to interfere with KANSEN energy systems." Bismarck nodded in agreement. Their tactical approach suggests intimate knowledge of both Ironblood and Eagle Union response protocols. They anticipated our defensive formations with concerning accuracy. "Yes," Uzumaki agreed, studying the movement patterns of the hostile vessels, which suggests they have access to classified tactical databases from multiple nations. His blue eyes met her ice blue gaze directly. Quote, "Or they have insider knowledge of KANSEN operational parameters at a fundamental level." The implication was clear, and troubling. Very few individuals possessed comprehensive understanding of KANSEN construction and capabilities across national variations. Commander Uzumaki himself was among that select group, as were certain high-ranking officials within each nation's naval research divisions. "You believe this is connected to the terrorist organization that attacked the summit," Bismarck stated rather than asked. "I do." Uzumaki moved to a damaged control panel, examining it with the precise eye of someone intimately familiar with the technology. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the internal systems access. Bismarck hesitated momentarily, allowing a foreign official direct access. To Iron Blood systems went against protocols. But the exceptional circumstances, and the commander's unique expertise, justified the deviation. "Proceed," she authorized. Uzumaki opened the access panel and began working with surprising familiarity, his hands moving through the complex Iron Blood interface without hesitation. Bismarck observed with interest. His knowledge of her nation's proprietary systems was more comprehensive than should have been possible for an Eagle Union commander. "Your proficiency with Iron Blood technology is unexpected," she noted, watching as he bypassed a mag-ed circuits with efficient improvisation. A slight smile crossed his face as he continued working. "I make it a point to understand the implementation variations each nation has developed from my original frameworks. Iron Blood engineering is particularly elegant, emphasizing reliability through redundancy rather than the adaptability favored by Eagle Union designs." There was genuine appreciation in his voice that Bismarck found herself responding to despite her natural reserve. Iron Blood excellence is founded on precision and forethought. We leave nothing to chance. A commendable philosophy, he agreed, completing a complex bypass that immediately restored partial functionality to the damaged systems. Though sometimes the unexpected proves valuable. As if to illustrate his point, the improvised repair caused the tactical display to flicker back to life, revealing that the enemy vessels had adjusted their formation, now clearly preparing for a coordinated strike against both their positions. We have approximately 40 seconds before they launch their next attack, Uzumaki observed calmly. Your main batteries are still offline, but I believe we can restore emergency propulsion. Bismarck quickly assessed the tactical options. Evasive capabilities would be preferable to stationary defense, given their demonstrated firepower. Agreed. Uzumaki moved to another damaged system, this time withdrawing a small tool from his uniform pocket, a specialized device Bismarck didn't recognize. This might seem unorthodox by Iron Blood standards, he warned, but it should prove effective. Before she could inquire about his intentions, he placed the device against the damaged propulsion control system. To Bismarck's surprise, a complex pattern of glowing symbols sprayed from the device into the machinery, reminiscent of computer code but somehow more organic, flowing like liquid light through the damaged components. What is that? She asked, professional curiosity overcoming her usual reserve. A modified application of fuinjutsu, sealing techniques from my homeland, he explained, guiding the flowing symbols with subtle movements of his fingers. It creates a temporary energy pathway around the damaged physical components. Bismarck observed with fascination as the strange energy patterns integrated with her ship's systems. She could feel the connection. Through her unique awareness as the KANSEN embodiment of the vessel, an unusual sensation, like a temporary graft becoming part of her own body. Propulsion restored to 60% capacity, Eugen reported with poorly concealed amazement. Excellent, Bismarck acknowledged, immediately formulating a tactical response. All vessels, prepare for maneuver pattern Donner -3. Execute on my mark. To her fleet, Bismarck noticed Uzumaki studying the tactical display with focused intensity. There was something in his expression, a calculated assessment that went beyond scientific analysis, that reminded her of the Iron Blood's most accomplished strategists. Commander, she said, I would welcome your tactical input, given your unique perspective on the situation. If he was surprised by her request, he didn't show it. These vessels are utilizing a distributed targeting system. Each ship functions as a sensor node for the others. If we can disrupt their communication architecture, their coordinated attack capability would be significantly compromised. Bismarck considered this assessment. Conventional electronic countermeasures have proven ineffective against their systems. Yes, he agreed, because they're not using conventional communication technology. He gestured toward the flowing symbols still maintaining the bypass in her propulsion systems. They're using a varietio N of the same energy framework that powers KANSEN systems, a hybrid of technology and what my people would call chakra. This revelation gave Bismarck pause. If true, it suggested capabilities that old have been impossible for anyone outside the original KANSEN development team to replicate. How would you propose disrupting such a system? She asked. Uzumaki's expression turned grave. I can create a counter-resonance field, but it would require direct application to at least one of the enemy vessels. Essentially, I would need to board one of them. Bismarck's eyes widened slightly, the only visible indication of her surprise at this audacious proposal. That would entail exceptional risk, Commander. As the primary authority on KANSEN technology, your capture or elimination would represent a strategic loss disproportionate to any tactical advantage. He met her gaze directly, a hint of amusement in his blue eyes. Your concern for my strategic value is noted, flagship Bismarck. But sometimes the most efficient solution requires direct intervention. Before she could formulate a suitable response to what seemed like reckless bravery disguised as tactical reasoning, the enemy vessels began their anticipated attack run. Bismarck immediately engaged the restored propulsion system, her vessel responding with surprising agility given the damage it had sustained. Execute Donner 3, she commanded. And the Iron Blood fleet responded with characteristic precision, creating a defensive screen that absorbed the initial barrage while allowing Bismarck's damaged flagship to maneuver into a less vulnerable position. The Eagle Union forces, still under Uzumaki's remote command, adapted their formation to complement the Iron Blood maneuver, creating an integrated defense that proved more effective than either nation's standard tactics alone would have achieved. Their attack pattern is evolving, Uzumaki noted, studying the tactical display. They're learning from each engagement, adapting to our responses. Bismarck observed the same concerning development. The enemy vessels were demonstrating an unnatural adaptability, as if guided by an intelligence that could analyze and counter conventional naval tactics in real time. This suggests more than advanced technology, she concluded. Their systems must incorporate some form of adaptive intelligence. Yes, Uzumaki agreed grimly. Which makes my proposal to disrupt their communication network even more critical. Without their shared intelligence, they would be forced to rely on individual capabilities. Bismarck calculated risk factors and potential outcomes with methodical precision. The commander's proposal was unorthodox and dangerous, but potentially decisive if successful. Iron Blood Doctrine M. PHA-sized calculated risk when the strategic advantage was sufficient. Very well, she decided. But I will accompany you. My defensive capabilities exceed yours, and as the target of their initial attack, I have a vested interest in their defeat. Uzumaki raised an eyebrow at her declaration. Your participation would increase our chances of success, he acknowledged. But it also increases the strategic risk. Are you certain your Iron Blood superiors would approve of such a joint operation? There was something in his tone, not quite a challenge, but a genuine question about her authority to make such a decision. Bismarck straightened imperceptibly, her pride as Iron Blood flagship evident in her bearing. As the commanding officer in this theater, tactical decisions are mine to make, she stated with absolute certainty. The Iron Blood Admiralty trusts my judgment in combat situations. A smile crossed his face, not mocking, but appreciative. Then I welcome your participation, flagship Bismarck. Between your combat capabilities and my technical expertise, our chances of success improve considerably. The decision made, they quickly developed an approach strategy. The Iron Blood and Eagle Union fleets would execute a coordinated maneuver to create a momentary opening that would allow a small, high-speed craft to approach the lead enemy vessel. Timing would be critical, the window of opportunity would exist for mere seconds. Prince Eugen, Bismarck addressed her second-in-command, you will assume command of the Iron Blood contingent during my absence. Maintain defensive integrity while executing the diversion maneuver as planned. Understood, flagship, Eugen responded with professional composure, though Bismarck detected concern in her eyes. May I remind you that your combat systems are still operating at reduced capacity following the damage sustained. Noted, Bismarck acknowledged. The risk calculation remains acceptable. As they prepared for the operation, Bismarck observed Uzumaki making his own preparations. He removed his formal uniform jacket, revealing a fitted black undergarment covered with subtle patterns that she recognized as variations of the energy directing symbols he had used earlier. Around his neck hung an unusual necklace with a red spiral symbol that matched the emblem on his discarded jacket. He caught her observing him and smiled slightly. Standard equipment isn't optimized for the type of energy work we'll be doing, he explained, securing various specialized tools in pockets and holsters concealed within his attire. Your energy work appears to incorporate elements beyond conventional KANSEN technology, Bismarck noted. As this knowledge shared with Eagle Union authorities, Uzumaki considered her question for a moment before answering. The principles are documented in technical briefings, yes. But the application methodology is more personalized. It's based on techniques from my homeland don't translate easily into standard engineering frameworks. This confirmed what Bismarck had suspected. The commander possessed capabilities beyond those officially acknowledged in international forums. It raised interesting questions about what else might be omitted from the official record of KANSEN development. Their preparation complete, they moved to the launch bay where a small, high-speed craft had been prepared for their mission. The vessel was an Iron Blood design, sleek, powerful, and heavily armored despite its size. Bismarck approved of the selection. If they were to attempt this unorthodox operation, they would do so with proper Iron Blood engineering supporting them. As they boarded the craft, Bismarck established a direct communication link with Eugen to coordinate the timing of the diversion maneuver. The tactical display showed the enemy vessels maintaining their coordinated attack pattern, still focusing primary attention on KANSEN embodied ships. "They're hunting KANSEN specifically," Uzumaki observed, studying the enemy movement patterns. "Conventional vessels are targeted only when they interfere with that primary objective." "Which supports your theory that this is connected to the anti-KANSEN terrorist organization," Bismarck concluded. "Their tactics reflect the same ideological position, that can't to be eliminated." "Yes," he agreed grimly. "Though, I suspect their actual objective is more complex than simple elimination. The attack pattern suggests capture rather than destruction as the priority." This assessment aligned with Bismarck's own analysis, though she found it curious that they had reached identical conclusions through apparently different analytical frameworks. Despite their different national affiliations and philosophical approaches, their tactical thinking showed remarkable convergence. "Diversion maneuver commencing in 30 seconds, came Eugen's voice over the communication system. "All units in position and prepared to execute." Bismarck acknowledged the report and turned to Uzumaki. "Are you prepared, Commander?" He met her gaze with calm confidence. "Ready when you are, flagship." The craft's engines engaged, a controlled vibration running through the vessel as it prepared for launch. Bismarck took position at the tactical controls while Uzumaki occupied the station dedicated to specialized equipment, including several devices of his own design that had been integrated into the Iron Blood systems. "Launch in 5, Eugen's voice counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1, execute." The combined Iron Blood and Eagle Union fleets suddenly shifted formation, creating a complex pattern of movement that momentarily confused the enemy vessels' targeting systems. In that instant of disorientation, the launch bay doors opened and their craft shot forward, accelerating to maximum speed in seconds. Bismarck guided the vessel with precision born of countless training exercises, navigating through the chaos of naval combat with unwavering focus. Enemy fire splashed around them, but the combination of their small profile, extreme speed, and the ongoing diversion kept them from becoming an immediate priority target. Approaching optimal range for boarding action, she reported as they closed on the lead enemy vessel. 15 seconds to contact. Uzumaki nodded, making final adjustments to his equipment. "Their hull appears to incorporate the same energy-absorbing material we encountered at the summit. Conventional breaching methods may prove ineffective. Iron Blood engineering is hardly conventional." Bismarck responded with a hint of pride, activating the craft's specialized breaching system, a concentrated energy drill designed to penetrate even the most advanced defensive materials. As they closed the final distance, the enemy vessel seemed to finally recognize the threat they represented. It began evasive maneuvers, simultaneously redirecting defensive systems toward their approaching craft. Energy beams cut through the water around them, each passing closer than the last. "They've identified us as a priority target," Bismarck noted calmly, executing a series of evasive maneuvers that kept them on course despite the increasing defensive fire. "Impact in 5 seconds. Uzumaki braced for contact, but his expression remained focused rather than concerned. Ready for breaching action. The Iron Blood craft struck the enemy vessel with precision, the specialized breaching system engaging on impact. For a moment, it seemed the enemy's hull would resist even this advanced technology, then, with a surge of energy, the breaching drill penetrated. "Breach successful," Bismarck reported. Securing boarding position, the craft locked onto the enemy vessel, creating a sealed connection that would allow them to board without exposure to the sea. Bismarck activated the internal security systems, ensuring their craft would remain secure during their absence, then moved to the boarding hatch. "I'll take point," she stated rather than suggested, her hand moving to the sidearm secured at her hip, a specialized weapon designed for close-quarters combat in maritime environments. Uzumaki didn't argue, recognizing her superior combat capabilities for this type of operation. "I'll need approximately 2 minutes of secured access to their central systems once we locate them," he informed her. "During that time, I'll be focused on the technical work and will require defensive coverage." Bismarck nodded her understanding of the mission parameters. With a final equipment check, she activated the boarding hatch. It opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a dark corridor within the enemy vessel. She moved through with practiced efficiency, weapon ready, senses alert for any sign of resistance. The interior of the vessel was unlike anything she had encountered in her extensive experience with naval architecture. The corridors were curved in organic patterns rather than the angular efficiency of conventional design. The lighting came from strips of bioluminescent material embedded in the walls, casting an eerie blue-green glow that created more shadows than illumination. This construction methodology is unfamiliar, she noted quietly as Uzumaki joined her in the corridor. Neither conforming to known national design philosophies nor standard engineering principles. No, he agreed, studying their surroundings with intense focus. This incorporates elements I haven't seen since. He paused, a troubled expression crossing his face. Since my RLY research expeditions to the ruins in the Southern Sea. Before Bismarck could inquire about this cryptic reference, a sound from further down the corridor alerted her to potential contact. She signaled Uzumaki to hold position, then advanced with silent precision, her enhanced senses detecting movement ahead. The first defender appeared suddenly, emerging from what had appeared to be a solid wall section. The figure wore armor unlike any conventional military design, organic-looking plates that seemed to flow over the body like a second skin, face concealed behind a mask with glowing eye slits. Bismarck reacted with precision honed through countless training scenarios. Her first shot struck the defender's primary weapon, rendering it inoperable. The second hit a junction in the unusual armor, causing the entire system to momentarily lose cohesion. The defender staggered but didn't fall, instead reaching toward a control panel on their wrist. Bismarck closed the distance with unexpected speed, delivering a precise strike that incapacitated her opponent before they could complete whatever action they had intended. Efficient, Uzumaki commented as he joined her, examining the fallen defender with professional interest. Though I note you chose non-lethal methods. Information gathering remains a mission priority, Bismarck responded practically. Dead enemies tell no tales. As Eagle Union vernacular would put it. A slight smile touched his lips at her adoption of the phrase. Indeed, and this particular enemy may have much to tell us. He knelt beside the incapacitated figure, examining the unusual armor more closely. This material, it's a technological implementation of principles I documented in my research on ancient sealing techniques. Bismarck raised an eyebrow. You recognize the design methodology. Not precisely, he clarified, indicating specific patterns within the armor's construction. But the underlying principles, the way energy is channeled and contained, bears striking similarities to techniques developed by the Uzumaki clan centuries ago. This revelation added an unexpected dimension to their mission. If the enemy was utilizing technology based on the commander's ancestral knowledge, the implications extended beyond current political tensions to something more personal, and potentially more dangerous. We should proceed to the central control systems, Bismarck suggested, practical as always despite this intriguing development. The diversion cannot be maintained indefinitely. Uzumaki nodded in agreement, rising from his examination of the fallen defender. The energy signatures are strongest in that direction, he indicated a corridor branching to their left. That would be consistent with central system placement in designs based on these principles. They advanced through the vessel, encountering two more defenders with the same efficient precision Bismarck had demonstrated earlier. The architecture became increasingly organic as they proceeded deeper, with fewer straight lines and more flowing, almost arterial pathways. This design philosophy is disturbing, Bismarck observed as they navigated the unusual corridors. It suggests a blurring of the distinction between vessel and operator that exceeds even KANSEN integration parameters. Yes, Uzumaki agreed, his expression troubled. It's as if error attempting to create a living vessel rather than a mechanical one with living components. He paused, studying a pulsating section of wall with concern. The ethical implications alone are deeply problematic. Setting aside the technical challenges, they reached what appeared to be the central control chamber, a spherical room dominated by a pulsating core of energy suspended in the center. Unlike conventional vessel command centers with their orderly arrays of instruments and controls, this space featured organic-looking interfaces that seemed to grow from the walls and floor. Fascinating and disturbing in equal measure, Uzumaki murmured, immediately moving toward one of the interface nodes. This confirms my suspicions about the origins of this technology. As he began working with the alien systems, Bismarck took up a defensive position near the entrance, vigilant for any approaching threats. Despite her focus on security, she found her attention repeatedly drawn to Uzumaki's work. His hands moved over the organic interfaces with surprising familiarity, occasionally forming unusual configurations with his fingers that caused the systems to respond in ways that seemed to bypass normal operational parameters. "You appear to have unexpected expertise with these systems, Commander," she observed. Despite their apparent unfamiliarity to both of us, he continued working as he responded, his focus unwavering. "The underlying principles are similar to techniques I studied extensively in my youth, before I began the research that led to KANSEN development. Different application, but the same fundamental understanding of how energy can be shaped and directed." Bismarck processed this information, adding it to her growing assessment of Commander Uzumaki, a man whose publicly known achievements, impressive as they were, apparently represented only a portion of his actual capabilities. "I've located their communication architecture," he announced after several minutes of intense work. "As I suspected, they're using a variation of chakra-based transmission rather than conventional electronic systems. That's why our standard countermeasures proved ineffective. Can you disrupt it as planned?" Bismarck asked, returning her attention to security as she detected movement in the corridor outside. "Yes, but it's more complex than I anticipated." His hands continued their intricate movements across the interface. "They've incorporated safeguards specifically designed to resist the type of counter-resonance I intended to employ. Which suggests they anticipated your involvement," Bismarck concluded, the tactical implications immediately clear to her. This was not merely an attack on the exercise, but potentially a trap designed specifically for you. "So it would seem," he agreed grimly. "Fortunately, they don't appear to have anticipated all of my capabilities." Before he could elaborate, the door to the chamber slid open and 3 more armored figures entered, weapons raised. Bismarck reacted instantly, positioning herself between the threat and Uzumaki. "Continue your work, Commander," she directed calmly. "I will handle this interruption." What followed demonstrated why Bismarck's reputation as Iron Blood's premier combat KANSEN was well deserved. Despite the confined space and the advanced weaponry of her opponents, she moved with a lethal grace that seemed impossible for someone of her stature. Each movement was precisely calculated for maximum efficiency, no wasted motion, no unnecessary force. The first attacker fell to a disabling shot to their weapon arm, followed by a precise strike to a vulnerability in their helmet. The second managed to fire their weapon, but Bismarck had already anticipated the action and shifted position, causing the energy beam to miss her by millimeters. Her counterattack was immediate and decisive, a sweeping movement that knocked the attacker off balance, followed by a precision strike to their central nervous system that rendered them unconscious. The third attacker proved more challenging, employing combat techniques that suggested advanced training beyond standard security protocols. Bismarck found herself engaged in a brief but intense hand-to-hand exchange that tested even her enhanced capabilities. Their combat training incorporates elements of Eastern martial disciplines, she noted with professional interest even as she defended against a particularly aggressive sequence of strikes. Specifically, techniques designed to counter enhanced strength with redirected momentum. "Yes," Uzumaki confirmed from his position at the interface, his work continuing despite the combat occurring meters away. "That particular style resembles techniques from my homeland, specifically those employed by specialized units trained to handle opponents with unusual capabilities." This information provided Bismarck with the tactical insight she needed. Adjusting her approach to counter the specific discipline she now recognized, she created an opening in her defense that invited a particular attack, then capitalized on the predictable response with a devastating counter that incapacitated her final opponent. "The threat is neutralized," she reported, her breathing barely elevated despite the exertion. "Status of your operation, Commander?" "Nearly complete," he responded, his hands forming a final, complex pattern over the interface. "I've identified the source code for their communication system and implemented the counter-resonance. But I've also discovered something unexpected." Before he could elaborate, a new voice echoed through the chamber, coming not from a person, but from the vessel's communication system. "How disappointing, Creator," the voice intoned, its artificial quality not quite masking a distinctly female timbre. I had hoped for more of a challenge from the legendary Naruto Uzumaki. Uzumaki's expression hardened at the address. You seem to have me at a disadvantage. He replied evenly. You know my name, but I don't believe we've been introduced. Names are such limited constructs, the voice responded with what sounded almost like amusement. But you may call me Abyss. We will become better acquainted in time. Bismarck moved closer to Uzumaki, her tactical mind assessing this new development. The leader of the terrorist organization, she concluded quietly. Indeed, flagship Bismarck, the voice confirmed, apparently having no difficulty hearing their exchange. Though, terrorist, is such a simplistic label. I prefer to think of our organization as evolutionary facilitators, facilitating evolution through unprovoked attacks on peaceful vessels. Uzumaki challenged, his hands continuing their subtle movement. NTS across the interface despite the conversation. That's a rather strained definition. Peace built on abomination is no peace at all, creator, the voice replied, a harder edge entering its artificial tone. You unleashed something you do not fully understand upon this world. We merely seek to correct that fundamental error. Bismarck noted that despite the conversation, Uzumaki was still working, more subtly now, but definitely continuing to manipulate the vessel's systems. She maintained her alert defensive posture while allowing him to lead the verbal exchange, recognizing that he was likely creating a distraction. If you believe KANSEN technology represents a danger, why employ derivatives of the same principles in your own vessels? Uzumaki asked, his tone conversational despite the tension evident in his posture. That seems contradictory and dedicated to correction. One must understand the nature of a disease to create its cure, creator, came the smooth response. We die what you have wrought so that we may unmake it properly. Fascinating philosophy, Uzumaki commented. Though your actions suggest a motivation more complex than simple opposition to KANSEN existence. Your attack pattern today targeted specific vessels and attempted capture rather than destruction. That indicates interest in the technology itself, not merely its elimination. There was a brief pause before the voice responded, suggesting Uzumaki's observation had struck a nerve, perceptive as your reputation suggests. But you mistake the nature of our interest. We seek not to use your abominations, but to understand how best to unmake them, to return them to their component elements without the false consciousness you have imposed upon them. Bismarck felt a chill at these words, not fear. For Iron Blood KANSEN were trained to suppress such unhelpful emotions, but a deep disquiet at the clinical dehumanization in the voice's tone. It spoke of her and her kind as if they were Meryl. Why malfunctioning machines to be disassembled? And yet, Uzumaki continued, his hands completing a final sequence at the interface, your own vessels incorporate principles remarkably similar to those. That give KANSEN their false consciousness, as you call it. One might almost suspect you're not being entirely forthright about your objectives. Another pause, longer this time. An interesting theory, creator. Perhaps we will discuss it further when next we meet. For now, I believe our initial exchange has been informative. A sudden alarm blared through the vessel, red emergency lighting replacing the eerie blue-green illumination. Uzumaki stepped back from the interface, a satisfied expression briefly crossing his face. It seems our time together is at an end, the voice noted. Now tinged with what sounded remarkably like amusement despite its artificial quality. But I leave you with a parting gift, a small token of what awaits in our future encounters. The pulsating core, at the center of the chamber suddenly intensified, energy patterns shifting from steady rhythms to chaotic surges. Uzumaki's expression changed to one of alarm as he read the implications of these changes. We need to leave, he stated urgently. They've initiated a cascade failure in the vessel's power core. It's designed to neutralize the counter-resonance I implemented and will result in catastrophic detonation in approximately 3 minutes. Bismarck immediately shifted to evacuation protocols, her tactical mind calculating the optimal extraction route. Our boarding craft remains secure at the breach point. If we encounter no further resistance, extraction within the time limit is achievable. They moved swiftly through the corridors, retracing their path toward the breach point. As Uzumaki had predicted, they encountered no further defenders. The vessel appeared to have been evacuated, leaving only the automated systems active. They sacrificed an entire vessel just to prevent the implementation of your countermeasures, Bismarck observed as they navigated the increasingly unstable environment. That suggests resources beyond what a typical terrorist organization could command. Yes, Uzumaki agreed grimly. And technical capabilities that shouldn't exist outside very specific research divisions within the major powers. The implications are concerning. They re-ake the boarding craft with 40 seconds remaining before the projected detonation. Bismarck efficiently disengaged the locking mechanisms while Uzumaki prepared the craft's engines for immediate departure. Breach seal disengaged, she reported as they completed the extraction procedure. Immediate withdrawal recommended. Executing now, Uzumaki confirmed, activating the craft's propulsion system. They pulled away from the doomed vessel with precisely calculated timing, far enough to escape the immediate blast radius when the detonation finally came, but not so far that they couldn't observe the results. The explosion, when it occurred, was unlike conventional weapons, a sphere of energy that seemed to consume the vessel from within, leaving nothing but scattered debris and a discharge. Bing ripple effect through the surrounding water. Energy signature consistent with chakra-based detonation, Uzumaki noted, studying the readings from their craft's sensors. But with modifications I haven't encountered before. They're innovating on the basic principles in ways that shouldn't be possible without access to original research materials. Bismarck considered the tactical and GIC implications as they returned to the main fleet. The enemy vessels had withdrawn following the detonation of their lead ship, disappearing with the same unnatural speed with which they had arrived. This encounter raises significant questions about the nature and objectives of this Abyss organization, she stated as their craft approached her flagship. Their technological capabilities, resource base, and tactical approach all suggest an entity with substantial backing, possibly from within existing power structures. Yes, Uzumaki agreed, his expression troubled. And their specific interest in KANSEN technology, particularly the underlying principles of consciousness transference and integration, suggests objectives more complex than the simple anti-KANSEN terrorism they presented at the summit attack. As they docked with Bismarck's flagship, they were greeted by Prince Eugen, whose composed expression couldn't entirely mask her relief at their safe return. Flagship, Commander, she acknowledged formally. The enemy fleet has withdrawn completely from the exercise area. All Iron Blood vessels report minimal to moderate damage, no critical systems compromised. Excel. NT work maintaining fleet integrity during our absence, Bismarck commended her. Prepare a secure communication channel to Iron Blood High Command. This incident requires immediate strategic assessment. As Eugen departed to execute these orders, Bismarck turned to Uzumaki. Commander, I believe our respective governments would benefit from shared intelligence regarding this encounter. While IRO-N blood doctrine typically emphasizes information security, the nature of this threat appears to transcend national boundaries. Uzumaki nodded in agreement. I concur. This Abyss organization represents a threat to all KANSEN. Regardless of national affiliation, their technological capabilities and apparent resources make them a strategic concern for every maritime power. They moved to the flagship's command center, where Bismarck initiated the secure communication protocols that would allow them to brief both Iron Blood and Eagle Union authorities simultaneously. As the systems established the necessary connections, she found herself reflecting on the day's events, particularly on her collaboration with Commander Uzumaki. Their working relationship had proven more effective than she had anticipated. Despite their different national affiliations and philosophical approaches, they had complemented each other's capabilities with remarkable synchronicity. His technical expertise had perfectly balanced her combat proficiency, while her tactical discipline had provided the framework within which his more adaptive approach could function optimally. It was not unpleasant to work with someone whose capabilities matched her own, albeit in different domains. The commander had demonstrated none of the condescension or paternalism she occasionally encountered from those aware of her status as a KANSEN. He had treated her as an equal partner in their mission, respecting both her tactical judgment and her combat abilities without qualification. The communication system indicated that both Iron Blood High Command and Eagle Union Naval Authority were connected and awaiting their report. Bismarck straightened her already perfect posture, professional discipline reasserting itself as she formal briefing. Before we begin, Uzumaki said quietly, I want to express my appreciation for your exceptional performance during this operation, Flagship Bismarck. Your combat profit, INC and tactical acumen were instrumental to our success. The compliment, delivered with evident sincerity rather than diplomatic politeness, caused Bismarck a moment of uncharacteristic uncertainty about how to respond. Iron Blood Protocol emphasized recognition of duty fulfilled rather than personal commendation. Your technical expertise was equally vital, Commander, she replied finally. Settling on professional acknowledgement is the appropriate response. Our combined capabilities proved effective against an unprecedented threat. A slight smile crossed his face, suggesting he recognized the formality of her response for what it was, not coldness, but the expression of her iron blood training and nature. Indeed, he agreed, perhaps there is more value in cross-national cooperation than either of our governments typically acknowledges. Before she could formulate a response to this mildly provocative statement, the communication system signaled that both commanding authorities were ready to receive their report. The moment for personal exchange passed, replaced by the formal requirements of their respective duties. As they delivered their briefing, Bismarck providing he tactical assessment while Uzumaki explained the technological aspects of what they had discovered, she found herself occasionally observing him with a new perspective. The commander was clearly more than his public reputation suggested, a complex individual whose capabilities and knowledge extended well beyond the already impressive achievements for which he was known. The Iron Blood valued strength, precision, and excellence above all else. These were qualities Bismarck had always embodied and expected in others. She had not anticipated finding them in an Eagle Union commander known primarily for scientific achievement rather than martial prowess. Yet Uzumaki had demonstrated all three: strength in his unflinching approach to danger, precision in his technical work, and excellence in the effectiveness of his countermeasures despite unexpected complications. It was intriguing. The briefing concluded with both authorities acknowledging the seriousness of the threat and authorizing continued joint investigation into the Abyss organization. As the communication system disconnected, Bismarck found herself facing a situation uncommon in her experience: uncertainty about the appropriate next steps in a non-combat interaction. Uzumaki solved this dilemma with characteristic directness. I believe we should continue this investigation together, Flagship Bismarck. The Abyss organization clearly has knowledge of both Iron Blood and Eagle Union capabilities, as well as unexpected familiarity with the foundational principles of KANSEN technology. A joint approach would maximize effectiveness in countering their activities. Bismarck considered this proposal with her usual methodical analysis. Your assessment has merit from a tactical perspective. However, such continued cooperation would require formal authorization from Iron Blood High Command beyond the immediate crisis response. Of course, he acknowledged. Though I suspect such authorization might be forthcoming. Given the nature of the threat we've identified. He was likely correct, Bismarck realized. The Iron Blood Admiralty was pragmatic despite its emphasis on national preeminence. If continued cooperation with Commander Uzumaki represented the most efficient approach to countering this threat, they would likely authorize it, albeit with carefully defined parameters. Until formal arrangements can be established, Uzumaki continued, perhaps we could at least continue sharing information about any developments related to this Abyss organization. Unofficial intelligence exchange, as Professor Onals with a common interest in KANSEN security. This suggestion skirted the edge of protocol, but remained within acceptable boundaries given the circumstances. Bismarck found herself nodding in agreement before she had fully analyzed all implications, an unusual departure from her standard decision-making process. A reasonable interim measure, she conceded. Though all information sharing comply with respective national security protocols. Naturally, he agreed with a slight smile that suggested he found her formal qualifications somewhat amusing but not unexpected. An aide approached, informing Bismarck that repairs to the flagship's damaged systems were progressing ahead of schedule, largely due to the innovative bypass Commander Uzumaki had implemented. This provided a natural transition to more technical matters, shifting their conversation to safer, more professional territory. As they discussed the repair progress and the technical implications of what they had discovered aboard the enemy vessel, Bismarck found herself unusually engaged in the exchange. The commander's knowledge of KANSEN systems was, of course, unparalleled, but it was his evident respect for Iran blood engineering principles that she found most compelling. He didn't merely acknowledge their effectiveness, he demonstrated genuine appreciation for the philosophical approach underlying their design. The redundancy principles in your propulsion system saved us today, he noted at one point. Eagle Union designs prioritize adaptability, which has its advantages, but the iron blood emphasis on reliability through redundancy creates a resilience that's difficult to compromise. Our engineering philosophy reflects our national values, Bismarck responded, a hint of pride evident despite her typically restrained demeanor. Strength through structure, excellence through precision, victory through unwavering resolve. Admirable principles, Uzumaki acknowledged. Though perhaps calm, clemented by occasional flexibility when circumstances require it, as you demonstrated today during our joint operation. Bismarck recognized the subtle point he was making, that her deviation from ICT Iron Blood tactical doctrine in favor of adaptive collaboration had contributed to their success. It was a fair observation, if mildly provocative. Tactical adaptation within strategic parameter. Is consistent with Iron Blood doctrine, she countered smoothly. Our emphasis on structure does not preclude evolution when analysis indicates clear advantage. A genuine smile spread across his face at her response. Perfectly expressed, flagship Bismarck. I would expect nothing less precise from Iron Blood's premier tactical mind. There was no mockery in his tone, only what appeared to be a genuine appreciation for her philosophical consistency. Bismarck found herself responding to this with unexpected warmth, the rigid formality of her demeanor softening almost imperceptibly. Their conversation continued as repairs progressed, touching on technical matters, tactical assessments, and occasionally broader philosophical questions about KANSEN development and integration. Throughout, Bismarck noted that Uzumaki maintained a careful balance between professional respect and personal engagement, never crossing into inappropriate familiarity, but neither remaining coldly official. It was pleasant, different from her interactions with Iron Blood officers, with their emphasis on hierarchy and protocol, or with other KANSEN, with their varied personalities and approaches. The commander engaged with her as both a professional equal and an individual worthy of personal consideration, a combination she had rarely experienced. When the time came for him to return to the Eagle Union command vessel, Bismarck accompanied him to the transfer point as protocol dictated for a visiting officer of his rank. As they waited for the transport craft to dock, a moment of silence fell between them, not uncomfortable, but weighted with unspoken observations and considerations. I hope this is not our last collaboration, flagship Bismarck, breaking the silence. Despite the unfortunate circumstances, I found our joint operation both effective and educative. Bismarck considered her response carefully, aware of the multiple levels on which his statement operated. The tactical LTS support continued cooperation against this specific threat, she acknowledged. And the technical exchange proved mutually beneficial. He smiled at her characteristically measured response. Always precise in your assessments. It's a quality I've come to appreciate. The transport craft completed its docking procedure, signaling that the moment of departure had arrived. Uzumaki extended his hand in the Eagle Union manner, a gesture Bismarck had observed but rarely participated in, as Iron Blood protocol favored more formal acknowledgments. After a brief hesitation, she accepted the handshake, noting the firm but measured pressure of his grip, neither domineering nor tentative, but balanced and confident. Until our next encounter, Commander Uzumaki, she said formally. Until then, flagship Bismarck, he replied, his blue eyes meeting her ice-blue gaze with unexpected warmth. May your waters remain calm and your victories decisive. With that, he boarded the transport craft, departing for his own vessel. Bismarck remained at the observation point until the craft had successfully docked with the Eagle Union command ship, as protocol dictated for monitoring the safe transfer of a high-ranking visitor. As she returned to the bridge to oversee the completion of repairs and the fleet's return to Iron Blood waters, Bismarck found her thoughts returning to various moments from their joint operation, the commander's unexpected combat proficiency, his innovative technical solutions, his evident respect for her capabilities and judgment. It was not often that Bismarck & Co. entered an individual who matched her own standards of excellence, particularly from another nation with different values and approaches. The experience had been illuminating. Perhaps there was Eid value in cross-national cooperation beyond the immediate tactical advantages, a perspective she would not have considered prior to today's events. As her flagship resumed its position at the head of the Iron Blood formation, preparing for the journey home, Bismarck allowed herself a moment of reflection on the day's developments. The threat represented by the Abyss organization was significant, and would require careful strategic consideration. The technological capabilities they had demonstrated raised troubling questions about the security of KANSEN systems and the fundamental principles underlying their creation. But amidst these concerning developments, she had also discovered something unexpected, a collaboration that had proven not merely effective, but genuinely satisfying. It was not a consideration that would appear in her official report, of course. Such personal observations had no place in Iron Blood tactical assessments. Nevertheless, as the fleet set course for home waters, Bismarck found herself looking forward to their next encounter with unexpected anticipation. Commander Uzumaki had proven himself worthy of Iron Blood respect, a rare achievement for any foreign officer, and particularly one not primarily known for combat prowess. It would be interesting to see what further surprises the creator might have in store. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, The Fox and the Tactician. Cherry blossoms drifted on the gentle breeze, pale pink petals spiraling down to rest upon the surface of the ornamental pond. The imperial gardens of the Sakura Empire stretched before Naruto in meticulous splendor, every stone, every tree, every reflection in the still waters positioned with deliberate purpose. It was a landscape designed not merely for beauty, but to guide the mind toward contemplation and clarity. Naruto sat on a polished wooden veranda overlooking the central garden, legs folded beneath him in the traditional Caesar position. He had changed from his usual White Eagle Union uniform into a formal Sakura Empire Haori and Hakama in deep blue with subtle red accents, a diplomatic courtesy to his hosts, but also a return to garments reminiscent of his homeland from another life. The blossoms are particularly magnificent this season, observed Admiral Mikasa, the elderly statesman who had served as the Sakura Empire's naval coordinator for nearly 2 decades. Some say it portends significant change. Naruto smiled slightly. In my experience, Admiral, significant change rarely waits for auspicious omens. Perhaps not, the old man conceded, his weathered face crinkling with amusement. But it comforts people to believe the universe provides warnings before upending their lives. He gestured toward the garden. Beauty before chaos, a pattern as old as time. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the petals continue their lazy descent. Though officially here for the Sakura Empire's annual naval technology exhibition, Naru, to knew his visit carried far greater significance in the wake of recent events. The Abyss organization's attacks had shaken international confidence in KANSEN security, and every major power was reassessing their position, some publicly, others through more subtle means. Your presentation this morning was well received, Admiral Mikasa noted, lifting an exquisite porcelain cup to sip his tea. Huff, I noticed you avoided specifics regarding the countermeasures you employed against the North Sea attackers. Some details remain classified pending joint security review, Naruto replied diplomatically. Both Eagle Union and Iron Blood protocols must be respected. The Admiral's eyes twinkled with knowing amusement. Of course, though I wonder if perhaps some details remain unclear even to you, Commander. The technology described in intercepted communications seemed unusual, even by your innovative standards. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Intercepted communications. A figure of speech, the Admiral demurred smoothly. Information has many currents, and the Sakura Empire has always excelled at reading water patterns. This gentle reminder of the Empire's intelligence capabilities was delivered with such polite indirection that Naruto couldn't help but appreciate the old man's skill. 2 decades in the highest levels of Sakura politics had honed Admiral Mikasa's ability to convey warnings and revelations without ever crossing the line into impropriety. Water patterns can be deceptive, Naruto responded in kind, especially when disturbed by forces below the surface. The Admiral inclined his head in acknowledgement of the counter. Indeed, which brings us to the true purpose of your visit, I imagine. Beyond formal exhibitions and diplomatic courtesies, I've always valued the Sakura Empire's perspective on naval innovations, Naruto said carefully. Your unique approach to balancing tradition with advancement has produced insights that other nations often overlook. A generous assessment, Mikasa replied, though we both know your interest extends beyond general innovations to specific developments within our KANSEN program. He set down his teacup with deliberate precision, particularly regarding certain anomalies that have been observed, so they had arrived at the heart of the matter more quickly than Naruto had anticipated. The Admiral's directness, veiled though it was in proper etiquette, suggested urgency beyond what international communications had indicated. I've reviewed the reports provided by your naval ministry, Naruto acknowledged. The performance inconsistencies described are concerning, particularly in the pattern of their manifestation. Concerning indeed, the Admiral agreed, especially as they appear most prominently in our flagship designs, those with the greatest spiritual connection to our national heritage. His aged fingers tapped thoughtfully against the tatami. Some within the imperial court Saint these anomalies represent design flaws inherent to the KANSEN framework itself. Naruto recognized beneath the statement, while no system is without potential for improvement, the patterns descry. Bed in your reports suggest targeted disruption rather than inherent flaws. An intriguing distinction, Mikasa observed, and one that carries significant implications regarding both cause and potential remedy. He lifted his gaze to meet Naruto's directly, particularly for those already affected. A slight rustling sound from the garden path drew their attention. A woman appeared, walking with measured grace despite the subtle unevenness in her gait. Her kimono was an elaborate arrangement of crimson and white, with gold accents that caught the afternoon sunlight. 9 golden tassels adorned her obi, swaying gently with each step. Most striking, however, were her fox-like features. Pointed ears emerged from flowing dark hair streaked with red highlights, and her amber eyes held a calculating intelligence that assessed everything in her path. Amagi-san, Admiral Mikasa acknowledged with a respectful nod. Your timing is impeccable, as always. A tactician who cannot anticipate arrivals and departures has already lost half the battle, she replied, her voice melodious yet carrying a hint of strain beneath its composed surface. She turned those penetrating amber eyes toward Naruto. Commander Uzumaki, the cherry blossoms welcome your return to lands that must remind you of your origins. Naruto rose and bowed with the precise degree of respect due to her position as the Sakura Empire's premier tactical KANSEN. Amagi-san, it is an honor to see you again. The blossoms are indeed reminiscent of another time. A subtle smile curved her lips as she noted his perfect execution of Sakura formal protocol. You wear our traditions well for one who has spent so many years among the eagles. Some patterns, once learned, are never truly forgotten, he replied. Admiral Mikasa rose with the careful movements of advanced age. I believe my presence is required at the ministerial briefing. Amagi-san, perhaps you would be kind enough to continue as host for our distinguished visitor. The Western Pavilion has been prepared for your strategic discussions. Naruto recognized the orchestrated nature of this exchange. The Admiral had clearly planned this transition, given Amagi a private audience without the political complications of formal request. Whatever she wished to discuss was significant enough to warrant such arrangements. It would be my pleasure, Amagi responded with a graceful inclination of her head. As the Admiral departed, Amagi gestured toward a stone path that wound through a different section of the gardens. The Western Pavilion offers an excellent view of the sunset, Commander. And perhaps more importantly, a degree of privacy that diplomatic reception halls cannot provide. They walked in silence for several minutes, following the path as it curved through carefully cultivated landscapes. Naruto noted the occasional pause in Amagi's stride, brief moments where she seemed to gather her strength before continuing. The reports of her condition appeared to be accurate, if not understated. You've noticed my inconsistencies, she said suddenly, her gaze fixed forward on the path. No need to practice diplomatic blindness, Commander. My condition is not a secret, merely an inconvenience. Is that the official position of the Sakura Admiralty? Naruto asked, matching her directness. A soft sound that might have been either amusement or resignation escaped her. The official position is that I am experiencing temporary system adjustments following extensive deployments. Unofficially, the medical division has catalogued a progressive deterioration in my core matrix that has resisted all conventional treatments. They reached a small wooden bridge arching over a narrow stream. Amagi paused at its center, looking down at the clear water flowing beneath. Do you know why they designed me with fox attributes, Commander? Naruto joined her at the railing. The official documentation cites the Sakura Empire's traditional reverence for kitsune as symbols of intelligence and tactical foresight. And unofficially, her amber eyes caught his, challenging. Unofficially, he said carefully, certain elements within you. Our design team sought to incorporate aspects they believed would resonate with specific energy patterns I had documented in my early research. A smile spread across her face, genuine this time, with a predator's satisfaction at confirmed suspicions. As I thought, they attempted to replicate your connection to the QB, hoping to create a tactical mind that could see all possibilities as clearly as the nine-tailed fox of legend. The admission was startling in its directness. While Naruto's history as a Jinchuriki was not entirely secret in this new world, the specific details of his connection to Kurama were known to very few. That the Sakura Empire had not only known but attempted to replicate aspects of that connection in their KANSEN design was concerning. A dangerous experiment, he observed neutrally. Indeed, she agreed, and one that succeeded beyond their expectations in some ways, while failing catastrophically in others. She resumed walking, leading them toward a secluded pavilion nestled among ancient pine trees. My tactical processing capabilities exceeded all projected parameters. My ability to anticipate enemy movements and calculate response scenarios has never been matched by any other KANSEN. Quote, but at a cost, Naruto concluded. Amagi's steps faltered slightly, her hand reflexively moving to her side before she caught herself and restored her composed demeanor. Yes, the energy system they attempted to replicate was never designed for a constructed vessel. It requires balance, harmony between vessel and energy that my creators did not fully understand. They reached the pavilion, an elegant structure with open sides that could be enclosed with sliding wooden panels for privacy. Inside, a low table had been prepared with tea and a stratig board of polished wood inlaid with mother-of-pearl grid lines. Black and white stones rested in lacquered containers beside it. Go, Naruto inquired, recognizing the ancient strategic game. I find it clarifies the mind. Amagi replied, carefully arranging herself on a cushion before the board. And reveals much about one's thinking that words might conceal. Naruto took the seat across from her. Noting the traditional arrangement placed him in the guest's position, playing black and moving first, a subtle courtesy from his host. An insightful approach, as they began to play, placing tones in the opening patterns of what promised to be a complex game. Amagi continued their conversation. The Admiral arranged this meeting at my request, Commander. Though I suspect you had already deduced as much. The thought had occurred to me, Naruto acknowledged, placing a stone at a strategic intersection. Your interest in meeting privately suggests matters beyond official Sakura Empire positions. Indeed, her stone clicked against the board in response, initiating a subtle challenge to his developing formation. I wish to discuss three matters of mutual concern: my deteriorating condition, the systematic sabotage of KANSEN designs across multiple nations, and the organization you encountered in the North Sea. Naruto studied the board for a moment before responding, both to her move and her statement. Ambitious agenda for a single conversation. Time is a luxury I increasingly cannot afford, she replied with blunt pragmatism, watching as he placed his next stone. Interesting choice. Aggressive yet adaptable. I've found that the best strategies maintain multiple viable paths forward, he said, the statement applying to both game and conversation. A philosophy that has served you well. By all accounts. Her next move was unexpected. Not a direct counter to his advance, but a positioning that suggested longer-term planning. What do you know of the Abyss Collective, Commander? The question was delivered casual, the careful observation in her amber eyes. The organization identified themselves during the North Sea incident. Beyond that, intelligence REM. Ains Limited. Sophisticated technology with unusual energy signatures, tactical capabilities suggesting advanced training, resources indicating substantial backing. A precise summary of what was included in the official reports. Amagi noted. But not, I suspect, the entirety of your knowledge. Naruto placed another stone before responding. What makes you say that? Because I know you, Commander Uzumaki. Her voice carried absolute certainty. Not merely through reports or official encounters, but through the underlying patterns of your decisions across multiple theaters over many years. She tapped a clawed finger thoughtfully against the table's edge. You perceive connections others miss, anticipate developments before they fully manifest, and prepare for contingencies that most would dismiss as implausible. You've studied my career closely, Naruto observed. A smile flickered across her features. As you have studied mine, I imagine. We recognize our own kind, do we not? The ones who see beyond the immediate board to the patterns forming beneath. She was right, of course. From their first formal introduction 3 years ago at an international naval strategy conference. Naruto had recognized in Amagi a mind that operated on multiple levels simultaneously, analyzing, anticipating, adapting with a fluidity that reminded him of his own approach to complex problems. The Abyss Collective, he said finally, deciding that calculated trust might yield necessary insights, appears to be utilizing modified applications of sealing techniques that originated with the Uzumaki clan. Techniques that were lost when my homeland was destroyed, with certain exceptions. Amagi's eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication that this confirmation had significance beyond what she had anticipated. Exceptions including your own knowledge, naturally, but insufficient to explain their technological implementation. Precisely. Naruto studied the board, noting how their conversation was reflected in their playing styles, probing advances, strategic retreats, the gradual development of complex formations. The specific applications of observed suggest access to research materials that should not exist outside highly secured archives. Or perhaps, Amagi suggested, placing another stone with deliberate precision, access to individuals who participated in your early development work. Her amber eyes met his directly. Before you were the creator, you worked with others. Researchers, technicians, specialists from various disciplines. Most of whom are accounted for, Naruto replied. Either continuing their careers in known positions or deceased with verified records. Most, she echoed pointedly. But not all. This was leading somewhere specific, Naruto realized. Amagi had information she was gradually revealing, testing his responses before committing to full disclosure. You have a name in mind, he deduced. A slight inclination of her head confirmed his assessment. Dr. Hikari Mizuno, specialized in energy transference systems, particularly the interfaces between conventional technology and what you termed chakra networks. Officially deceased following a laboratory accident 8 years ago. The name was immediately familiar. Hikari had been a brilliant scientist, particularly gifted in visualizing how energy could flow through complex systems. She had contributed significantly to the earliest prototypes of what would eventually become KANSEN technology before her tragic death in an experimental equipment failure. I attended her memorial service. Naruto said quietly. Her contributions were fundamental to several breakthrough developments. Yes, Amagi agreed, which makes her recent activities particularly troubling. Naruto's hand paused above the board. Recent activities. 3 months ago, surveillance systems at a remote Sakura Empire research outpost captured this image. Amagi withdrew a thin folder from within her kimono sleeve and slid it across the table. Inside was a single photograph, grainy but clear enough to identify a woman examining specialized equipment in what appeared to be a secure laboratory. Despite the years that had passed, Naruto immediately recognized Drive. Mizuno's distinctive features and the characteristic way she leaned forward when concentrating on technical details. This is impossible, he said, studying the image closely for signs of manipulation or misidentification. I saw her body after the accident. The damage was extensive. Yet the biometric analysis confirms identity with 97.8% certainty. Amagi countered. And the specialized equipment she is examining appears to be a variation of the core stability matrix used in KANSEN construction, specifically, the type implemented in my design. Naruto looked up from the photograph, his expression grave. Where was this taken? An officially decommissioned facility on the northern island of Hokkaido. Sup. Osedley closed following budget reallocations 3 years ago, but apparently still operational under classified protocols. Amagi's voice remained steady, but he noticed a subtle tremor in her hand as she reached for her teacup. 2 days after this image was captured, I experienced the first major system failure in what has become a progressive pattern of deterioration. The implications crystallized with disturbing clarity. You believe your condition is not a design flaw but deliberate sabotage. I believe, she said carefully, that the inconsistencies reported across multiple KANSEN signs, most prominently in those with advanced tactical capabilities, display patterns consistent with targeted interference rather than spontaneous degradation. Naruto placed his stone, then sat back to consider this new information. If Hikari was alive, and if she had turned her considerable talents toward undermining KANSEN stability, the threat was far more serious than even the direct attacks had suggested. Why come to me with this rather than through official channels? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. A sad smile touched Amagi's lips. Official channels are compromised, Commander. The security breach extends into the highest levels of the Sakura Admiralty. My investigation has been conducted through personal resources and trusted allies only. Including Admiral Mikasa, one of few I trust implicitly, she confirmed. His age and established position place him above most political maneuvering, and his loyalty to the Empire transcends factional interests. Naruto considered the strategic implications, both on the board before him and in the larger game Amagi had revealed. You said there were 3 matters you wished to discuss. We've covered your condition and the potential sabotage. What of the third? Amagi's expression grew more serious. The Abyss Collective is not merely targeting KANSEN technology, Commander. They seek something more fundamental, something connected to your original research into the boundaries between physical and spiritual energy. This was unexpected. Naruto's earliest work, before KANSEN development, had focus on understanding how chakra, the fusion of physical and spiritual energies, could interact with an enhanced technology. It had been largely theoretical, with limited practical applications beyond specialized communications and certain medical devices. What evidence supports this assessment? He asked. Pattern recognition, she replied simply. The facilities targeted, the specific KANSEN designs compromised. The technological signatures observed during attacks, all indicate focus on the spiritual energy integration aspects of your work rather than the more conventional technological implementations. She placed another stone on the board, creating a formation that subtly shifted the balance of territory in her favor. Consider the attack pattern during the North Sea incident. Their KANSEN with the strongest spiritual technological integration quotients, specifically, those whose designs incorporated elements drawn from historical or mythological archetypes. Naruto reviewed the engagement data in his mind. Realizing she was correct, Bismarck, with her embodiment of historical significance and national spirit, had been the primary target, followed by other KANSEN whose designs similarly incorporated strong spiritual elements. They're hunting something specific within the KANSEN framework, he concluded. Yes, Amagi agreed, and I believe it relates to your work with the Biju energies. The statement hung in the air between them, its implications profound. Very few people in this world knew about the tailed beasts of Naruto's original reality, the 9 massive chakra constructs that had shaped the politics and conflicts of the shinobi era. Fewer still understood how that knowledge had influenced certain aspects of early KANSEN development. That information was never documented in any research materials, Naruto said carefully. No, Amagi acknowledged, but it exists in the fundamental architecture of certain KANSEN designs, including my own. Her amber eyes held his with unnerving intensity. You recognized it the first time we met, did you not? The resonance pattern that shouldn't have been possible without direct knowledge of Kyubi chakra. He had, though he'd never spoken of it. During their first encounter, Naruto had sensed something familiar in Amagi's energy signature, an echo of the distinctive pattern that had once characterized his connection with Kurama. Not the power itself, but an artificial approximation created by scientists working from fragmentary theoretical models. How did the Sakura Empire obtain that knowledge? He asked, the question he had wondered about for years but never directly posed. A rueful smile touched her lips. Not through official channels, I assure you. Certain elements within our intelligence divisio N maintained surveillance on your early research activities. Fragments of data were collected, analyzed, and eventually incorporated into experimental designs. Her expression turned contemplative. Huff, I doubt even they fully understood what they were replicating. Clearly not, Naruto agreed grimly, given the progressive deterioration you're experiencing. The Biju chakra requires balance. Harmony between vessel and energy that cannot be artificially constructed without specific accommodations. Which brings us to the heart of my request, Commander. Amagi placed her final stone for this round, completing a complex pattern that secured her position across the board. I believe you possess knowledge that could stabilize my condition, knowledge that derives from your personal expertise. NCE rather than your scientific research. And there it was, the true purpose behind this carefully orchestrated meeting. Amagi wasn't merely sharing intelligence about the Abyss Collective or reporting on sabotage. She was seeking something far more personal, a solution to her deteriorating condition based on Naruto's unique experience as a Jinchuriki. What you're suggesting goes beyond conventional medical intervention, he said carefully. These are not conventional circumstances, she countered. My tactical assessments indicate that my functional operational time without intervention is approximately 73 days. The Sakura Empire's medical division estimates more conservatively, perhaps 50 days before critical systems failure. Despite her clinical description, the reality was stark. Amagi was dying. Her artificially constructed body breaking down under the strain of energies it had never been designed to channel. I need to examine you more thoroughly before I can determine if what you're suggesting is even possible, Naruto said after a moment of consideration. The specific implementation in your design may not be compatible with the balancing techniques I developed for natural chakra systems. But you'll try. There was a vulnerability in her question that contrasted sharply with her usual composed demeanor. Naruto met her gaze directly. Yes, though, I must be clear, what you're asking involves significant risk. The process of harmonizing Biju-derived energies can be traumatic, even under ideal circumstances. I am familiar with risk assessment, Commander, she replied with a hint of her characteristic dry humor. And the alternative offers 100% certainty of an undesirable outcome. A valid point, pragmatically delivered. Naruto found himself respecting her clear-eyed approach to her own mortality, neither sentimental nor fatalistic, but simply realistic about the parameters she was working within. Very well, he agreed. We'll need a secure location, specialized equipment, and absolute privacy. This isn't something that can be attempted with observers or interruptions. Already arranged, she said with a satisfied nod. Admiral Mikasa has authorized use of the private research pavilion at the Imperial Retreat. Officially, we will be engaged in strategic consultations regarding Abyss Collective countermeasures. The facility has been equipped according to specifications I believed would be necessary, though you may wish to review and adjust as needed. Naruto raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. You were quite confident in my response. A knowing smile curved her lips. As I said, Commander, I know you. Your pattern of decisions across multiple scenarios indicates a 97.3% probability that you would agree to assist. Given the specific circumstances presented. That precise, is it? He asked, amusement coloring his tone. A tactician deals in probabilities, she replied serenely. Though, I will admit that particular figure might include a small margin of hopeful adjustment. This unexpected glimpse of vulnerability, the admission that her calculating exterior concealed very human hopes, shifted something in Naruto's perception of her. Behind the tactical genius and composed demeanor was someone facing her own mortality with courage but not without fear. When do you propose we begin? He asked. Tomorrow morning, she said. The Imperial Retreat is approximately 1 hour from the capital by private transport. We can depart after the morning exhibition ceremonies. Naruto nodded in agreement. I'll need to review your technical specifications beforehand. The complete files, not the sanitized versions provided for diplomatic exchanges. Already included in the secure materials at the retreat, she assured him, along with the progressive medical data tracking my condition's development. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a palace attendant, who bowed deeply before addressing Amagi. Forgive the intrusion, Amagi-sama, but your presence is requested at the strategic briefing for tomorrow's naval demonstration. The planning minister specifically asked for your tactical assessment. Amagi acknowledged the message with graceful composure. Please inform the minister that I will join them shortly. As the attendant departed, she turned back to Naruto. It seems our game must remain unfinished for now. A temporary adjournment, he suggested. To be continued at a more opportune moment. Indeed, she rose with careful dignity, though. He noticed the brief tightening around her eyes that suggested the movement caused her discomfort. Until tomorrow, Commander Uzumaki. The Imperial Guardsmen will escort you to this evening's formal reception when you are ready. After she departed, Naruto remained at the strategy board, studying the pattern of stones they had created. It was a complex arrangement that revealed much about Amagi's tactical mind, her ability to see multiple steps ahead, to create formations that served multiple purposes simultaneously, to adapt when necessary while maintaining core strategic objectives. He also noted what the game revealed about her condition. Certain moves had shown slight hesitations, moments where her legendary focus had deterioration was further advanced than she had admitted, perhaps than she herself fully recognized. Rising from the table, Naruto moved to the edge of the pavilion, looking out over the carefully tended garden as evening approached. Cherry blossoms continued their gentle descent, pink petals now tinged with the gold of sunset. Beautiful and ephemeral, a reminder of life's transience that the Sakura Empire had elevated to philosophical significance. The situation was more complex than he had anticipated when accepting the invitation to the technology exhibition. Amagi's revelations about Dr. Mizuno's apparent survival and the targeted nature of the KANSEN degradation suggested a conspiracy far more sophisticated than initial assessments of the Abyss Collective had indicated. If Hikari was indeed alive and working with this organization, they possessed knowledge of KANSEN fundamental architecture that made them exponentially more dangerous. She had been present for the earliest theoretical breakthroughs, had contributed to the core systems that enable the fusion of spiritual and technological elements. With that knowledge, she could potentially identify vulnerabilities that no one else would recognize, perhaps even create countermeasures for fails. AFES Naruto had integrated into the original designs. And if they were specifically targeting the Biju-derived aspects of certain KANSEN designs, as Amagi suggested, their objective might be far more concerning than simple anti-KANSEN terrorism. The power of the tailed beasts, even in the diluted, theoretical implementations that had influenced some KANSEN designs, was not something to be trifled with casually. Naruto's reflections were interrupted by the arrival of his assigned security detail, 2 Sakura Empire guardsmen in traditional armor modernized with subtle technological enhancements. They bowed respectfully, maintaining proper distance. Commander Uzumaki, the senior guard addressed him. We are instructed to escort you to your quarters to prepare for this evening's reception, when you are ready. Naruto acknowledged them with a nod. Thank you, I believe I am finished here for now. As they led him back through the gardens, now bathed in the golden light of approaching sunset. Naruto's mind continued processing the implications of Amagi's revelations. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, the delicate and potentially dangerous work of examining her condition and determining if his unique knowledge could offer a solution. But beyond that immediate concern lay the broader strategic questions raised by the Abyss Collective's activities. He would need to contact Enterprise and Bismarck discreetly, share this new intelligence without compromising Amagi's trust or violating Sakura Empire confidentiality. The connection between Drive, Mizuno and the Abyss Collective, E's technological capabilities represented a significant development that could affect their joint investigation. For now, however, he would maintain his diplomatic role, attending the evening's reception with appropriate courtesy while observing the political currents that flowed beneath the formal pleasantries. If Amagi was correct about infiltration at high levels of the Sakura Admiralty, Tony Geit's gathering might reveal subtle indicators of which factions were involved, and perhaps provide insights into their ultimate objectives. The Imperial reception hall gleamed with carefully orchestrated splendor. Ornate lanterns cast warm light across polished wooden floors and illuminated spectacular floral arrangements that showcased the Empire's horticultural mastery. Traditional music laid by court musicians provided a refined acoustic backdrop to the murmur of diplomatic conversation. Naruto moved through the gathering with practiced ease, exchanging pleasantries with officials from various nations while maintaining the careful balance required by his unique position. As both the creator of KANSEN technology and an Eagle Union commander, he occupied a complex diplomatic schpock. Respected and courted by all major powers while completely trusted by none. Commander Uzumaki greeted a smooth voice to his right. What an unexpected pleasure to find you admiring our humble artistic displays. Naruto turned to find Minister Kagaya, the Sakura Empire's youthful but ambitious director of naval research. Her formal kimono was an understated masterpiece in shades of midnight, blue with silver accents that suggested distant stars, beautiful but intentionally less elaborate than those worn by higher-ranking officials, a calculated humility that Naruto recognized as carefully crafted. Minister Kagaya, he acknowledged with a precise bow. The Empire's artistic traditions never fail to impress. This particular arrangement seems to suggest the relationship between individual elements and the greater harmony, a theme with many applications. Her eyes widened slightly, pleased by his accurate reading of the symbolic display. How perceptive, Commander. Many visitors approach, see at the beauty without recognizing the philosophical intent. She gestured toward the arrangement. The interplay between single blossoms and the overall composition mirrors our approach to naval strategy, individual excellence in service to collective purpose. An admirable philosophy, Naruto agreed. Though I imagine implementing it presents certain challenges, particularly when individual elements experience unexpected variations. It was a probing statement, carefully phrased to observe her reaction. Minister Kagaya had been appointed to her position relatively recently, following our predecessor's sudden retirement amid rumors of policy disagreements. Her department oversaw all KANSEN operations within the Empire, including the medical monitoring of Amagi's condition. Variations are inevitable in any complex system. She replied smoothly. The wisdom lies in determining which represent beneficial adaptation and which require correction. And who makes that determination? Naruto asked, maintaining a conversational tone despite the pointed nature of the question. A subtle smile curved her lips. In the Sakura Empire, we believe in balanced judgment, technical expertise, guided by traditional wisdom and imperial purpose. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with calculated openness. I understand you spent considerable time with Amagi-san this afternoon. I hope you found the exchange illuminating. So she was already aware of his private meeting, not surprising given her position, but the speed of her knowledge suggested active monitoring rather than routine reporting. Amagi-san's tactical insights are unparalleled, he responded neutrally. It's always a privilege to exchange perspectives with minds of her caliber. Indeed, the minister agreed. Quote, her contributions to our strategic doctrine have been invaluable, which makes her current adjustment period particularly unfortunate. The careful phrasing, adjustment period, rather than duration or illness, told Naruto much about the official position being maintained. The Sakura Empire was not acknowledging the severity of Amagi's condition, at least not publicly. I understand she's been relieved of active combat duties, he noted, watching for reaction. A temporary precaution, Minister Kagaya assured him smoothly. Our medical division anticipates full restoration of functionality following completion of their recalibration procedures. Either she was unaware of the true prognosis, or she was deliberately maintaining the official fiction despite knowing otherwise. Given her position and evident intelligence, Naruto suspected the latter. I'm pleased to hear it, he said, matching her diplomatic tone. Amagi-san's tactical capabilities represent a significant strategic asset for the Sakura Empire. For all maritime nations, the minister corrected graciously. Tactical innovations developed by our premier strategists ultimately benefit collective security, particularly in these uncertain times. She lowered her voice slightly. Wider I had hoped to discuss with you, Commander, perhaps in a more private setting than tonight's reception allows. Oh, Naru. To maintain a politely interested expression while mentally noting this predictable development. If Amagi was correct about infiltration at high levels, Minister Kagaya's desire for a private meeting could represent either threat or opportunity. Yes, she continued. In light of recent international incidents, the Sakura Empire is reassessing certain aspects of our KANSEN security protocols. Why? Our unique expertise would be invaluable in this process. Her expression conveyed earnest professionalism with just the right touch of deference. Perhaps you might consider extending your stay follow. Wing the exhibition to consult with our research division. With Eagle Union approval, of course. The invitation was expertly delivered, acknowledging his primary allegiance while appealing to his technical authority. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a reasonable diplomatic request. An interesting proposal, Naruto replied. Though my schedule following the exhibition includes several commitments that would be difficult to reschedule. This was true, if understated. His planned work with Amagi would indeed be impossible to postpone given her condition. Perhaps we could discuss potential alternatives. Of course, she agreed smoothly. Flexibility is essential in diplomatic matters. Perhaps a brief initial consultation, with provisions for more comprehensive engagement at a later date. Before Naruto could formulate a suitably ambiguous response, they were interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Mikasa, moving with the measured dignity of his advanced age. Ah, Commander Uzumaki, Minister Kagaya. He greeted them warmly. I see you've found each other without need for formal introductions. Excellent. He turned to Naruto with a conspiratorial smile. I must warn you, Commander. Our Minister of Research is quite persistent when she identifies expertise relevant to her projects. She has been speaking of consulting with you for weeks. This casual revelation of PRIOR interest was skillfully delivered, a subtle warning disguised as grandfatherly humor. Admiral Mikasa was letting Naruto know that Kagaya's sudden interest was not spontaneous but calculated, potentially connected to Amagi's revelations. The commander was just explaining his challenging schedule, Minister Kagaya informed the admiral with a gracious smile. Perhaps you might assist in identifying opportunities for our consultation. Given your oversight responsibilities for international cooperation, I would be delighted, the old man agreed genially. Though I believe the commander's mediate post-exhibition schedule includes strategic discussions related to the North Sea incident. Security protocols and all that. Very hush-hush, but vitally important in these troubled times. Naru, to suppressed a smile at the admiral's nimble maneuvering. Without directly lying, he had created diplomatic cover for the planned work with Amagi while simultaneously establishing a barrier to Kagaya's attempted recruitment. Exactly so, Naruto confirmed. Though I appreciate the minister's interest and would be happy to arrange a more formal consultation through appropriate channels at a later date. Minister Kagaya accepted this diplomatic deflection with perfect grace, though Naruto detected a flicker of calculation behind her pleasant expression. Of course, security must take precedence, particularly given recent events. She offered a respectful bow. I look forward to more substantive discussions when circumstances permit. After she departed to greet other dignitaries, Admiral Mikasa regarded Naruto with twinkling eyes that belied his serious tone. Minister Kagaya is exceptionally talented, Commander. Her rise through our research hierarchy has been nothing short of meteoric. I've reviewed several of her published papers on KANSEN integration systems, Naruto acknowledged. Innovative approaches, particularly regarding spiritual resonance amplification. Yes, the Admiral agreed thoughtfully. Her work in that specific area attracted considerable attention from certain factions within the imperial court. Her appointment to the ministerial position followed shortly thereafter, despite several more experienced candidates. The implication was clear enough. Kagaya's rapid advancement had been politically rather than merit-based, supported by factions' interests. Ted specifically in her work on spiritual energy aspects of KANSEN technology, the very elements Amagi had identified as targets of the Abyss Collective's interest. Interesting, Naruto commented neutrally. Spiritual resonance remains one of the more esoteric aspects of KANSEN functionality, difficult to quantify through conventional metrics. Indeed, the Admiral nodded sagely. Which perhaps explains why traditional research methodologies sometimes yield unexpected results. He gestured subtly toward where Amagi had entered the reception hall, moving with careful dignity despite her condition. Our most successful implementations often defy precise scientific explanation, do they not? The intersection of technology and spiritual energy has always contained elements that transcend conventional understanding. Naruto agreed. It's what makes the field both fascinating and occasionally unpredictable. Admiral Mikasa smiled appreciatively at this diplomatic phrasing. Well put, Commander. Now, I believe I've monopolized enough of your time. The Sakura Empire prides itself on sharing its distinguished guests equitably among all worthy conversationalists. With a respectful nod, he moved away, leaving Naruto to continue his circulation through the gathering. Over the next 2 hours, Naruto engaged in similar diplomatic exchanges with representatives from various nations and factions. Each conversation provided small insights into the political currents surrounding KANSEN technology and security, concerns about the Abyss Collective's activities, questions about potential vulnerabilities in existing designs. Subtle probing about his planned countermeasures. Throughout it all, he maintained careful observation of the room's dynamics, particularly noting which officials interacted with Minister Kagaya and how those interactions appeared to flow. Certain patterns emerged: an informal coalition of younger, reform-minded officials who deferred to her subtly, and a corresponding group of traditionalists who maintained polite distance. Most telling was the interaction, or lack thereof, between Kagaya and Amagi. Though both circulated through the same reception, they prepared to carefully avoid direct engagement, maintaining positions that kept them in separate conversational clusters. When protocol finally forced a brief acknowledgement between them, Naruto observed the perfectly executed courtesies that nonetheless conveyed unmistakable tension. As the evening progressed toward its conclusion, Naruto found himself momentarily alone near one of the magnificent floral arrangements. Taking advantage of the brief solitude to process his observations. The political landscape within the Sakura Empire was more fractured than external appearances suggested, with clear divisions regarding KANSEN policy and, potentially, connections to the Abyss Collective's activities. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" came a soft voice beside him. Arrangements that appear natural while being meticulously controlled, rather like diplomatic conversations at imperial receptions. Naruto turned to find Amagi had joined him, her amber eyes regarding him with knowing amusement. Despite her composed exterior, he noted the subtle signs of fatigue, a slight pallor beneath her carefully applied cosmetics, a barely perceptible tremor in her hands when they remained still too long. "Some arrangements require more control than others," he replied, continuing the metaphorical conversation. "Particularly when certain elements prove unstable." "Quite so," she agreed. "Though experienced gradient instability sometimes yields the most interesting blossoms." She gestured subtly toward where Minister Kagaya was engaged in animated conversation with several foreign dignitaries. "Our ambitious minister has been quite attentive to your movements this evening." "We had an interesting discussion about potential consultations," Naruto confirmed. "She seems particularly interested in spiritual resonance applications." Amagi's expression revealed nothing, but her voice carried a hint of tension. "Of course, it's her specialty, after all." She adjusted her position slightly, he movement casual to any observer but clearly intended to ease discomfort. "I trust your accommodations are satisfactory." "Excellent," he assured her, recognizing the transition to more neutral territory for any who might be observing their exchange. "The Sakura Empire's hospitality remains unmatched. We do value tradition in all its forms," she replied. Then, lowering her voice, she added, "Transportation to the Imperial Retreat has been arranged for 9 a.m. tomorrow. An attendant will guide you to the private departure area following the morning exhibition segment." Naruto inclined his head slightly. "I look forward to continuing our strategic discussions in a more focused setting." A subtle smile touched her lips. "Until tomorrow, then, Commander." With graceful dignity that revealed nothing of her condition to casual observers, she departed to fulfill her remaining social obligations. The remainder of the evening proceeded without significant development, and Naruto retired to his assigned quarters in the diplomatic wing of the Imperial Palace. The suite was traditionally appointed with modern amenities discreetly integrated, sliding paper doors concealing advanced security systems, tatami floors housing climate control technology, and ancient scroll paintings containing subtle monitoring devices. Naruto disabled the surveillance elements with practiced efficiency, not obviously enough to trigger security protocols, but effectively rendering them non-functional. Standard procedure in diplomatic quarters, the Sakura Empire would have been disappointed if he hadn't identified and neutralized their monitoring attempts. Once assured of privacy, he activated a specialized communication device of his own design, one that operated on principles different from conventional technology to bypass standard detection methods. The device established a secure connection to a similar unit currently in Enterprise's possession. Secure link established. C. AIM Enterprise's crisp voice after a moment. Report status, Commander. Situation more complex than anticipated, Naruto replied, keeping his voice low despite the privacy measures. Have confirmed. Abyss collective connection to former research associate, Drive. Hikari Mizuno, previously believed deceased. Evidence suggests systematic sabotage of specific KANSEN designs, targeting spiritual energy integration components. A brief pause as Enterprise processed this information. That aligns with patterns we've identified in recent incidents. Iron Blood reports similar anomalies in 3 tactical class KANSEN. Though less severe than what you described in Amagi's case. Not surprising, Naruto noted. The Sakura Empire's implementation incorporated elements that would make them more vulnerable to this specific type of interference. Your assessment of immediate threat level? Enterprise inquired, ever focused on tactical priorities. Elevated, he responded. If they're targeting spiritual integration aspect specifically, certain KANSEN designs are at significantly higher risk, particularly those with enhanced tactical processing capabilities. Including Bismarck, Enterprise concluded. I'll update her through secure channels immediately. Agreed. Also advise heightened security for any KANSEN with significant spiritual resonance components in their design architecture. If the pattern holds, they'll be priority targets. Understood. There was a brief pause before Enterprise continued. Commander, there's another development you should be aware of. We've identified unusual energy signatures at 3 locations consistent with the readings from the North Sea encounter. One in Eagle Union territory, one near the Northern Parliament exclusion zone, and one in the Sakura Empire. Naruto finished, the pieces connecting in his mind. Yes, Enterprise confirmed. Satellite reconnaissance indicates activity at a supposedly decommissioned research facility on the northern island of Hokkaido. The same facility Amagi had identified in her intelligence briefing. The confirmation from independent Eagle Union sources validated her assessment and suggested the situation was progressing more rapidly than anticipated. I'll be investigating a related matter tomorrow, Naruto informed her. Possibly connected to these energy signatures. Maintain current monitoring but no direct intervention until we have more information. Acknowledged, Enterprise replied. Will you require extraction support? Not at this stage, he assured her. Current activity. Ties remain within diplomatic parameters. I'll maintain regular check-ins through secure channels. Understood. Enterprise out. The communication ended, and Naruto deactivated the device, consoling it once more within his personal effects. The confirmation of activity at the Hokkaido facility added urgency to tomorrow's work with Amagi. If the Abyss Collective was actively operating within Sakura Empire territory, possibly with support from elements within the government, the political situation was even more volatile than it appeared. He prepared for rest with methodical efficiency, his mind processing multiple strategic scenarios simultaneously. Tomorrow would require delicate balance. The technical work of examining Amagi's condition and determining potential solutions, while maintaining awareness of the broader political and security implications surrounding their activities. As he settled onto the traditional futon, Naruto found his thoughts returning to Amagi herself. Beyond the tactical genius and composed exterior, he had glimpsed something today that resonated with his own experience, the burden of carrying power that was both gift and curse, the isolation of being mentally different from those around you, the determination to fulfill one's purpose despite personal cost. Their situations were different in many ways, but the core experience, of containing energy that strained against one's very being, created a connection that transcended conventional understanding. Naruto had learned to harmonize with Kurama over years of struggle and growth. Amagi faced a similar challenge without the benefit of time or natural adaptation. Whether his knowledge could help her remained to be seen. But as he drifted toward sleep, Naruto found himself increasingly determined to try. not merely for the strategic value of preserving her tactical capabilities, but for the more fundamental principle that had guided his actions since childhood: no one should have to face such burdens alone. Morning brought clear skies and cool breezes that sent cherry blossoms swirling across the Imperial Palace grounds. Naruto attended the scheduled exhibition events with appropriate diplomatic engagement, observing demonstrations of the Sakura Empire's latest naval innovations while maintaining awareness of the political undercurrents flowing beneath the formal presentations. Minister Kagaya made several appearances, always surrounded by her coalition of supportive officials. She acknowledged Naruto with perfect courtesy whenever protocol required, but made no further attempts at private conversation, a restraint that suggested either strategic patience or redirection of focus. Admiral Mikasa, meanwhile, maintained his role as senior statesman with practiced skill, offering traditional wisdom and occasional humorous observations that belied the sharp intelligence behind his grandfatherly demeanor. His casual positioning Naruto at key moments, providing brief opportunities for unobserved exchanges disguised as conventional pleasantries. "Our mutual friend has already departed for the retreat," the admiral informed him during one such moment. "Security arrangements are in place. The usual monitoring has been redirected, a technical malfunction that will require several days to repair." Naruto nodded slightly, acknowledging the information while maintaining an expression of polite interest in the ongoing demonstration of advanced sonar systems. Convenient timing for maintenance issues. A twinkle appeared in the old man's eyes. "Our technical team can be remarkably efficient when properly motivated. The chief engineer's daughter recently received an unexpected scholarship to a prestigious university, quite fortunate." "Indeed," Naruto agreed, appreciating the admiral's subtle approach to ensuring their privacy. Influence rather than force, incentive rather than coercion, the traditional Sakura way applied to modern security concerns. As the morning session concluded, an attendant in formal palace livery approached Naruto with a respectful bow. "Commander Uzumaki, if you would follow me. Your transportation for the strategic consultation has been prepared." Naruto followed the attendant through less traveled corridors of the palace, eventually emerging at a private courtyard where a traditional-appearing carriage awaited. The Veihi's classic exterior concealed modern propulsion systems, another example of the Sakura Empire's characteristic blending of tradition and technology. The journey to the Imperial retreat took just under an hour, following scenic routes through forests and mountain passes that had been protected from development by imperial decree for centuries. The landscape grew increasingly secluded, with ancient trees forming natural barriers that isolated the retreat from the surrounding territory. When they finally arrived, Naruto found his expectations both confirmed and exceeded. The Imperial retreat was not the palatial complex he had anticipated, but rather a collection of traditional buildings arranged around natural features: a mountain stream, stands of ancient pines, carefully tended rock gardens. The architecture emphasized harmony with the environment, structures positioned to frame natural vistas and capture seasonal beauty. An elderly attendant greeted him at the entrance path with a deep bow. "Commander Uzumaki, welcome to Sirente. Amagi-sama awaits you in the research pavilion. Please, follow me." The path wound through immaculately maintained gardens, eventually leading to a structure that appeared traditionally appointed from the exterior but revealed sophisticated technological integration within. Sliding doors operated on silent mechanisms, climate control maintained perfect temperature and humidity without visible systems, and discreet security measures ensured complete privacy. Amagi awaited him in the central chamber, seated beside a low table arranged with technical displays and monitoring equipment. She had exchanged her formal kimono for a simpler garment that would allow easier examination and treatment, though the design maintained the dignified elegance that characterized her public appearance. "Commander," she greeted him, rising with careful movements that betrayed increasing difficulty. "Thank you for honoring your commitment despite the political complications that have emerged." Quote, "The complications make the work more necessary, not less," he replied, setting aside the formal bag containing specialized equipment he had brought. "The connection to the Hokkaido facility has been confirmed through Eagle Union intelligence sources. Your assessment was correct." A flash of satisfaction crossed her features. "Tactical analysis is my primary function, after all." She gestured toward the arranged equipment. I've prepared the monitoring systems according to standard protocols for KANSEN examination. However, I suspect your approach may require adjustments. Yes, Naruto confirmed, already evaluating the setup with professional assessment. What we'll be attempting goes beyond conventional diagnostics. I'll need to establish court connection to your core energy systems, similar to medical intervention but focused on the spiritual energy integration points rather than technological components. I anticipated as much, she said, gesturing toward additional equipment arranged on a separate table. These are the specialized tools Admiral Mikasa was able to acquire based on theoretical models of your early research. They may require modification for our specific purpose. Naruto examined the assembled equipment with appreciation for the Admiral's thoroughness. Most were advanced medical devices designed for KANSEN treatment. But several specialized components showed remarkable insight into what might be required for the unconventional procedure he was contemplating. This is excellent preparation, he acknowledged. Though there are aspects of what we'll be attempting that can't be fully addressed through technology alone. He turned to face her directly. Before we begin, I need to be completely clear about what this entails. The process will be invasive, not just physically, but on an energy level that most KANSEN have never experienced. I understand, she replied with characteristic composure. I don't think you do. Naruto countered gently. What the Sakura Empire attempted to replicate in your design was a naturally occurring phenomenon, the harmonization between Jinchuriki and Biju. But that harmonization isn't just about energy containment or amplification. It's about resonance between two distinct consciousnesses. Amagi's amber eyes widened slightly. You're suggesting my design incorporated elements that created some form of secondary consciousness. Not exactly, Naruto clarified. Rather, the energy pattern they attempted to replicate has properties that function as if conscious, responding to emotional states. Resonating with intention, adapting to the vessel's condition. Without proper harmonization, these properties manifest as progressive deterioration, the energy essentially fighting against containment. Like an immune response to foreign material, Amagi suggested, her analytical mind immediately seeking familiar frameworks. Similar in principle, though operating at a more fundamental level, Naruto agreed. The deterioration you're experiencing isn't simply mechanical failure. It's an energetic dissonance that manifests physically, your body breaking down because the energy it contains hasn't been properly integrated. Amagi processed this information with remarkable equanimity considering its implications. And your proposed solution involves proper integration through techniques derived from your experience as a Jinchuriki. Yes, he confirmed, though I must emphasize that this is theoretical adaptation rather than established procedure. The artificial nature of your system presents unique challenges compared to natural Jinchuriki development. What are the success parameters? She asked, ever the tactician seeking to quantify outcomes. Naruto appreciated her practical approach even as he recognized the limitations of conventional metrics for what they were attempting. Best case scenario, we establish sustainable harmony between your core consciousness and the energy system, halting deterioration and potentially enhancing certain capabilities. Worst case. He paused, knowing honesty was essential despite its harshness. Worst case is acceleration of the current deterioration or catastrophic system failure. Death, in other words, she stated calmly. An outcome already guaranteed without intervention, merely expedited. She nodded decisively. The tactical calculation is straightforward. Preceding represents the only scenario with potential positive outcome. Despite her clinical framing, Naruto sensed the courage beneath her words, the clear-eyed acceptance of risk in the face of certain alternative. He had faced in his previous life, moments where the only path forward led through darkness and danger. Very well, he acknowledged. Let's begin with baseline measurements to establish current conditions. They worked methodically for the next hour, Naruto guiding Amagi through a series of diagnostics that went beyond standard KANSEN examination protocols. He monitored not just the technological components of her systems but the energy flows that connected them, the spiritual resonance patterns that conventional instruments could barely detect. What he discovered confirmed his initial assessment. The Sakura Empire's attempt to replicate QB-like energy in Amagi's design had created A system fundamentally at odds with itself. Power that should have flowed harmoniously instead creating friction at critical junctures, spiritual energy that should have amplified her capabilities instead eroding the connections between consciousness and vessel. The deterioration is more advanced than your medical division has detected, Naruto informed her as they completed the examination. Quote, conventional monitoring focuses on technological components, missing the energetic disruption that precedes physical manifestation. Amagi received this news with characteristic composure. What is why? Our assessment of intervention viability. Challenging but not impossible, he replied honestly. The core energy pattern remains intact despite the progressive deterioration. If we can establish proper harmonization, there's potential for stabilization. Then let us proceed, she said simply. Naruto began preparations for the main procedure, adapting the available equipment to suit their specific needs while explaining the process to Amagi. What I'm proposing involves establishing direct energetic connection between us, similar to what medical technicians do during intensive KANSEN procedures. But operating primarily on the spiritual energy level rather than the technological. Through your chakra system, she noted with understanding. Yes, I'll essentially create a temporary bridge between our energy systems, allowing me to demonstrate the proper harmonization pattern for your system to replicate. He configured the final connections on the specialized interface he had constructed. The process will require you to lower all defensive protocols and allow complete access to your core systems, including memory archives and consciousness parameters, Amagi observed, understanding the implications. Complete vulnerability. Naruto met her gaze directly. Yes, which is why trust is essential for this procedure. Once connected, there can be no barriers between us, technological or psychological. Something flickered in her amber eyes, not fear, but a moment of genuine vulnerability rarely displayed by the composed tactician. In 9 years of existence, I have never allowed such access. Even standard maintenance protocols maintain certain firewalls around core consciousness functions. I understand the significance of what I'm asking, Naruto assured her. And I commit to respecting the trust it represents. Amagi studied him silently for a moment, her tactical mind visibly calculating implications and possibilities. Finally, she nodded. Proceed, Commander. You have my trust. The simple statement, delivered without qualification or condition, carried weight beyond its brevity. From Amagi, whose existence was defined by calculation and strategic force. Unconditional trust represented extraordinary deviation from established parameters. Thank you, Naruto acknowledged, understanding the gift he had been given. Please recline on the examination platform. The process will likely induce a trance-like state as your consciousness interfaces directly with the energy harmonization. Amagi positioned herself as directed, her movements betraying increasing difficulty as her condition progressed. Once she was properly arranged, Naruto activated the specialized equipment that would monitor her vital systems during the procedure. Ready? He asked, positioning himself beside her. Yes, she replied with calm certainty. Naruto placed one hand on her forehead and the other over her heart, the primary junction points for the energy system he would be accessing. Closing his eyes, he began channeling his chakra in the specialized pattern developed through years of work with Kurama, creating the harmonious flow that had transformed their antagonistic relationship into perfect synchronicity. The connection formed more quickly than he had anticipated, Amagi's system responding to his energy with immediate resonance, as if recognizing something fundamentally familiar. The sensation was disorienting at first, similar to his early experiences with Kurama but with distinct differences that reflected the artificial nature of her energy system. As their consciousnesses connected through the chakra bridge, Naruto found himself in a manifestation of Amagi's internal landscape, a vast traditional garden more elaborate and extensive than any physical space could contain. Stone pathways wound through precisely arranged features, each element positioned with tactical significance that created layered meanings and connections. In the center of this mental garden stood Amagi herself, though her appearance had subtle differences from her physical form. Here, the fox-like aspects of her design were more pronounced, 9 golden tails flowing behind her. Her features more vulpine while remaining recognizably human. She wore a traditional battle kimono in shades of crimson and gold, adorned with symbols that Naruto recognized as Ansi. and protection seals from his own culture. This is unexpected, she greeted him, her voice echoing slightly in this mental space. I had anticipated a more clinical interface. The connection Atesh on levels beyond conventional understanding, Naruto explained, approaching her across the immaculate garden. This manifestation represents how your consciousness organizes and perceives itself. A reflection of your true nature rather than your physical form. Amagi looked down at herself, studying the 9 tails with evident fascination. So this is how I appear to myself beneath conscious awareness. Interesting that the fox aspects are more prominent here. Your creators incorporated those elements more deeply than they likely realized, Naruto observed. The resemblance to Kyubi-in RGY is not merely superficial, it's fundamental to your core architecture. As they spoke, Naruto became aware of the garden's deterioration, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Cherry trees at the perimeter were withering, stones cracking, water features clouding with impurities. The manifestation of Amagi's internal deterioration spreading through her mental landscape. You can see it progressing, she noted. Following his gaze to the spreading decay. My tactical systems identified the pattern weeks ago, calculating progressive failure scenarios with 97.8% confidence. She gestured toward the withering sections. It begins at the peripheral systems before advancing toward core functions. Yes, Naruto confirmed, but the progression isn't merely mechanical or technological. It's an energetic dissonance, your system fighting against itself because the power it contains hasn't been properly harmonized. He moved closer, studying the energy flows visible to his experienced perception. Golden energy coursed through the garden's features, similar to what he remembered of Kurama's chakra, but with subtle variations that reflected its artificial nature. Where natural Biju chakra would flow in rhythmic patterns. This energy moved in more rigid configurations, powerful but lacking the adaptive fluidity that characterized true-tailed beast energy. The energy is too constrained, he explained, indicating the rigid pathways. Your creators attempted to control it through technological limitations rather than harmonious integration. The result is increasing pressure against those constraints, power that shones instead eroding them. Amagi absorbed this assessment with her characteristic analytical focus. What is the solution? Reconfiguration of the fundamental relationship between your consciousness and the energy system, Naruto replied. Not control through constraint, but harmony through acceptance and direction. You speak as if the energy has its own will, she observed. Her tactical mind immediately identifying the core implication. In a sense, it does, he confirmed. What your creators attempted to replicate was not merely power but the essence of Biju energy, which inherently carries aspects of consciousness. Not a separate being within you, but energy that responds to intention and emotion as if conscious. Understanding dawned in her amber eyes. That explains the correlation between emotional states and system fluctuations. During battle scenarios requiring intense tactical processing, the deterioration temporarily stabilizes, as if the energy finds purpose in those moments. Exactly, Naruto nodded. Like Kurama, this energy responds to clear purpose and direction. The dissonance occurs when that purpose is unclear or when artificial constraints prevent natural expression. Amagi considered this with the thoroughness that had made her the Empire's premier tactician. You're suggesting I need to establish conscious relationship with this energy rather than merely containing it. Yes, not unlike what I eventually developed with Kurama, though with significant differences given the artificial nature of your system. Deterioration around them accelerated suddenly, cherry trees collapsing into dust, water features evaporating, stone pathways cracking apart. Amagi winced, the manifestation of her consciousness show. Wing pain that her physical form concealed through discipline. We need to act quickly, Naruto said, observing the accelerating decay. The connection between us has temporarily destabilized the existing constraints, which means the dissonance will progress more rapidly until new harmony is established. What must I do? Amagi asked, practical even in this strange mental landscape. First, we need to access the core energy source, the equivalent of where Kurama resided within my seal. Naruto studied the garden's layout, recognizing the tactical organization that reflected Amagi's consciousness. In this manifestation, it would be represented by the most protected, central feature of your mental landscape. Amagi nodded in understanding. The inner sanctuary. This way. She led him long pathways that shifted and reconfigured as they walked, the tactical mind's natural defense mechanisms adapting even within this shared consciousness. Around them, the deterioration continued spreading, sections of the once perfect garden collapsing into formlessness. They reached what appeared to be a traditional Sakura Empire shrine complex, more elaborate and extensive than any physical structure could be. 9 torii gates formed the approach, each bearing seals and symbols that Naruto recognized as modified versions of Uzumaki clan containment techniques, evidence that her creators had indeed studied his early research more thoroughly than officially acknowledged. This is where I process my most critical tactical calculations, Amagi explained as they passed through the gates. The core of my strategic capability. Beyond the final gate lay a courtyard surrounding a still pond. In the center of the pond stood a small island with a single cherry tree, massive and ancient, its branches extending protectively over the entire space. Unlike the withering trees at the garden's perimeter, this one blazed with golden energy that flowed through its trunk and branches like visible sap. The source, Naruto confirmed. Recognizing the concentrated power. This is where your creators anchored the Kyuubi-derived energy to your consciousness. As they approached the pond's edge, the water began to ripple. Disturbed by unseen currents, the tree's golden energy pulsed more intensely, branches swaying despite the absence of wind in this mental space. It responds to your presence, Amagi observed. Recognition. Resonance, Naruto corrected. My natural chakra recognizes the pattern they attempted to replicate. The energy responds to that familiarity. The ripples in the pond intensified, water rising in a spiraling column that gradually formed a distinct shape, a fox-like figure composed of golden energy and water, 9 tails flowing behind it. Not as massive or defined as Kurama had been, but clearly inspired by the same archetypal form. Fascinating, Amagi whispered, observing the manifestation with tactical assessment rather than fear. A representation of the energy's consciousness aspect. The energy fox regarded them silently, its form flickering between stability and dissolution as if struggling to maintain coherence. Naruto recognized the symptoms immediately. Artificial constraints fighting against natural expression, technological limitations conflicting with spiritual essence. This is the heart of the dissonance, he explained quietly. Your creators attempted to harness this power while simultaneously restricting its essential nature. The result is inherently unstable, energy that should flow freely instead fighting against its containment. How do we resolve the conflict? Amagi asked, her practical mind seeking solutions rather than dwelling on the implications. By establishing a new relationship based on harmony rather than constraint. Naruto stepped forward, addressing the energy fox directly. I see you, and I understand what you are, neither fully Biju nor merely power, but something in between. A shadow of what was, created to serve without true understanding of your nature. The manifestation rippled, its form becoming slightly more defined as it responded to direct acknowledgement. 9 tails lashed behind it, not aggressively, but as if testing freedom of movement. Amagi, Naruto continued, you need to approach and establish direct connection. Not as controller to controlled, but as partners in a shared existence. She moved forward without hesitation, her tactical mind assessing and adapting to this unprecedented scenario with remarkable composure. Standing before the energy fox, she spoke with clear purpose. I acknowledge you as part of my existence, not merely tool or weapon, but essential aspect of who and what I am. The dissonance between us serves neither, and threatens both. The manifestation reacted visibly to her words, its form stabilizing further. 1 tail extended toward her, golden energy rippling along its length. Touch it, Naruto instructed. Establish direct connection rather than the constrained interface your creators designed. Amagi reached out without hesitation, her hand meeting the extended tail. Golden energy flowed around her fingers, then up her arm, gradually enveloping her form. Her eyes widened at the sensation, not pain, but intense awareness beyond normal parameters. It's communicating, she said wonderingly. Not with words, but with impressions, intentions, possibilities. Yes, Naruto confirmed. This is the true nature of Biju energy, not merely power to be harnessed, but consciousness to be understood. What your creators failed to recognize is that such energy cannot be merely contained, it must be partnered with. The golden energy continued flowing between Amagi and the fox manifestation, gradually establishing a new pattern of interaction. As this harmonization progressed, Naruto observed the deterioration around them beginning to stabilize, no longer advancing, though the damage already done remained visible. The dissonance is resolving, he noted with cautious optimism. Your systems are beginning to adapt to the new relationship. Amagi's expression reflected intense concentration as she processed the unprecedented sensations and information flowing through their connection. It's showing me possibilities. Tactical scenarios beyond what I could calculate independently. Perspective. The energy amplifies natural capabilities when properly harmonized, Naruto explained. For me, it enhanced healing and stamina. For you, it appears to expand tactical processing, exactly what your creators intended, though through harmony rather than control. Quote, the process continued for what seemed like hours in the mental landscape, though Naruto knew physical time would be passing differently. Gradually, the energy, Fox's form merged more completely with Amagi's, no longer separate entities but aspects of a unified whole. The golden light suffused her form, flowing through and around her in natural patterns rather than the rigid configurations that had characterized the previous arrangement. As the harmonization neared completion, Naruto observed Amagi's mental manifestation changing subtly, her nine tails becoming more defined. Her features reflecting a perfect balance between human and fox aspects rather than the artificially imposed characteristics of her physical design. The process is nearly complete, he informed her. How do you feel? Quote, different, she replied thoughtfully. More integrated, as if aspects of my processing that were previously separated by artificial boundaries now function as unified whole. She looked down at her transformed appearance with analytical interest. The tactical implications are significant. My scenario calculation capabilities have expanded exponentially, with particular enhancement to adaptive response modeling. Even in this momentous personal transformation, her mind remained focused on tactical assessment, a reminder of the fundamental nature that defined her existence. Naruto found himself respecting this core consistency even as he recognized the profound change occurring within her systems. The harmonization appears successful, he observed, noting the stabilization of the surrounding mental landscape. The deterioration has halted, though complete restoration of damaged systems will require time and additional work. Amagi nodded in understanding, a process rather than an event. Logical, given the fundamental nature of the changes. She studied her transformed manifestation with practical assessment. Will these changes be visible in my physical form? Some aspects may manifest subtly, Naruto explained. Energy patterns influence physical expression, particularly in KANSEN whose designs incorporate spiritual elements. However, the most significant changes are internal, the relationship between consciousness and energy system rather than external appearance. Around them, the mental landscape began shifting, adjusting to the new equilibrium established between Amagi's consciousness and the harmonized energy. The damaged sections didn't disappear, but the spreading deterioration had definitively halted, and new growth was visible at the edges of affected areas, the beginning of restoration. It's time to complete the process and return to physical awareness, Naruto said, preparing to disengage the chakra bridge that connected them. The transition may be disorienting initially, as your systems adjust to the new configuration. Understood, Amagi acknowledged. Then, with uncharacteristic directness, she added, thank you, Naruto. Not merely for the technical intervention, but for seeing what my creators did not. That harmony requires recognition of mutual existence, not merely control of useful power. The use of his first name rather than formal title carried significance that Naruto didn't miss. A rare personal acknowledgement from someone who maintained careful distance through formal protocol. You're welcome, Amagi, he replied simply, respecting the moment with equal directness. With careful attention to minimize disruption, Naruto began disengaging the chakra bridge that had connected their consciousnesses. The mental landscape gradually faded, returning them to awareness of the physical world and the research pavilion where their bodies remained. Naruto opened his eyes, removing his hands from the connection points on Amagi's form. The monitoring equipment around them displayed significant changes in energy patterns, shifting from the erratic fluctuations that had characterized her deterioration to more stable, harmonious rhythms. Amagi's eyes opened moments later, the amber irises now containing subtle golden flecks that hadn't been present before, a physical manifestation of the energetic changes within her systems. She took a deep breath, then sat up with cautious movements that gradually became more confident as she assessed her condition. The physical discomfort has reduced by approximately 73%, she reported with characteristic precision. Mobility parameters show significant improvement, and tactical processing speed has increased beyond previous optimal benchmarks. Your system is adapting to the new energy configuration, Naruto explained, monitoring the readings on the specialized equipment. The harmonization appears to be maintaining stability. During the transition to full consciousness, Amagi rose from the examination platform with noticeably improved fluidity compared to her earlier movements. She paused, conducting an internal ass's SM, and with the thoroughness that defined her tactical approach to all situations. Fascinating, she observed after a moment. The energy integration has eliminated several processing bottlenecks my psi stems had developed to contain the dissonance. Tactical calculation pathways that previously required sequential processing now operate in parallel configuration. The natural flow of properly harmonized energy, Naruto confirmed. Without artificial constraints fighting against its essential nature, the power enhances rather than erodes. Amagi moved to the monitoring equipment, studying the readouts with analytical precision. The improvement exceeds projected parameters by significant margin. If this stability maintains, my operational capabilities will surpass previous peak performance within approximately 72 hours. Once adaptation is complete, the physical restoration will take longer, Naruto cautioned. While the energy dissonance has been resolved, the damage already inflicted on your systems requires conventional repair processes. I'd estimate 2 to 3 weeks for complete restoration of affected components. Acceptable timeframe, she acknowledged pragmatically. Strategic advantages of restored and enhanced capabilities justify temporary operational limitations during recovery. Ever the tactician, Naruto thought with appreciation for her consistent nature. Even in the face of personal transformation, she evaluated outcomes through the lens of strategic value and operational effectiveness. We should continue monitoring for at least 24 hours to ensure the harmonization remains stable during normal activity cycles, he advised. While the initial indications are positive, energy integrations of this nature sometimes develop unexpected variations as systems fully adapt. Agreed, Amagi nodded. The retreat is secure for continued observation, with communication blackout protocols in effect as arranged by Admiral Mikasa. We can maintain Nisesa Rai monitoring without external interference. As they established the ongoing monitoring systems, Naruto observed subtle changes in Amagi's movements and expressions, nothing dramatic enough to be immediately obvious to casual observers, but noticeable to his experienced perception. The fox-like aspects of her design seemed more naturally integrated now, less like imposed characteristics and more like essential elements of her being. You're noticing the physical manifestations, she observed, demonstrating her characteristic perceptiveness. Subtle but present, my internal diagnostic systems indicated adjustments to several design elements, convergence toward more natural integration rather than artificially maintained parameters. Yes, Naruto confirmed, your system is finding its own equilibrium now that the energy dissonance has been resolved. The changes appear to be refinements rather than fundamental. Sential nature remains consistent. Indeed, a slight smile touched her lips, though with expanded perspective on what that nature encompasses. She paused, considering something with evident care before continuing. During the harmonization, I accessed memories and impressions that seemed to predate my official activation, shadowy but distinct, as if viewed through multiple filters. Naruto nodded, unsurprised by this development. The energy your creators attempted to replicate carries aspects of memory and consciousness beyond conventional parameters. In harmonizing with it directly, you've likely accessed impressions embedded within the energy structure itself, O's of the original Biju consciousness they sought to emulate. Not merely emulate, Amagi corrected with quiet certainty. Fragments of the original itself. At Naruto's surprised expression, she continued. The impressions contain distinctive characteristics too specific for theoretical modeling, experiences and perspectives that could not have been artificially constructed without direct sampling. This revelation carried disturbing implications. If the Sakura Empire had somehow obtained actual samples of Biju Chakra rather than merely theoretical models based on Naruto's research, it augusted access to resources that should have been impossible, and raised serious questions about how such samples had been acquired. That shouldn't have been possible, Naruto said carefully. The Bijuu energy from my reality was not accessible for direct sampling by conventional means. And yet, Amagi replied with equal care, the evidence suggests otherwise. The impressions carry distinct signature patterns consistent with original rather than replicated energy, as if small fragments of authentic material were somehow incorporated into my design framework. The implications expanded Amagi's personal situation to broader strategic concerns. If genuine Biju Chakra had been accessible to the Sakura Empire's research division, it might explain the Abyss Collective's specific interest in their KANSEN designs, and potentially connect to Dr. Mizuno's apparent survival and current activities. This information significantly alters our understanding of both your condition and the broader strategic situation. Naruto acknowledged. If authentic Biju Chakra fragments were used in your creation, it explains both the exceptional capabilities you've demonstrated and the particular difficulties in maintaining system stability, and potentially connects to the Abyss Collective's objectives, Amagi added, her tactical mind immediately mapping the strategic implications. If EY seek control of Biju-derived energy as you've suggested, designs incorporating authentic fragments would represent particularly valuable targets. Yes, Naruto agreed grimly. Which makes your successful harmonization both a significant personal achievement and a potential strategic asset in understanding their technology and objectives. Amagi moved to a traditional seating area arranged near the monitoring equipment, gesturing for Naruto to join her. As they settled into the comfortable arrangement, she poured tea from a pot that had been keeping warm nearby, the simple, practiced move meant demonstrating her improved physical condition. The harmonization has given me access to tactical perspectives I had not previously considered, she said after they had both been served. Particularly regarding the connection between your original research and the Abyss Collective's apparent objectives. What perspectives? Naruto asked, appreciating both the tea and the tactical insights Amagi consistently provided. The energy patterns exhibited by their technology during the North Sea incident, she replied thoughtfully. Initial analysis suggested modified application of principles documented in your early research. However, the harmonized energy within my systems recognizes something more specific, a particular implementation methodology consistent with a specific researcher's approach. Dr. Mizuno, Naruto concluded. Yes, Amagi confirmed, but with additional characteristics suggesting collaboration with someone else, someone whose energy signature the harmonized system recognizes as problematic. Problematic in what way? Naruto pressed, sensing important information behind her careful phrasing. Amagi's expression grew more serious. The impressions are fragmented and difficult to interpret precisely. However, they consistently associate this signature with concepts of imbalance, disruption, and fragmentation, as if the energy itself recognizes a fundamental incompatibility. This description triggered memories from Naruto's original reality, of individuals whose chakra carried distinctive characteristics reflecting inner disharmony or ideological extremism. In particular, it reminded him of how Kurama had reacted to certain Uchiha chakra signatures, recognizing them as inherently threatening based on historical experiences. Can you identify NY-specific characteristics of this problematic signature? He asked. Amagi closed her eyes briefly, accessing the newly harmonized impressions with focused concentration. Spiral patterns moving against natural flow. Division where unity should exist. Purpose divorced from balance. She opened her eyes, looking slightly frustrated by the impressionistic nature of what she was receiving. Not standard tactical data, but persistent associative patterns the energy recognizes. Though vague, these descriptions resonated with concerning familiarity. They suggested someone whose approach to energy, manipulation fundamentally opposed the natural harmony that characterized healthy chakra systems, someone whose objectives might include not merely controlling Biju energy, but potentially perverting its essential nature. This information, combined with Dr. Mizuno's confirmed survival and the activity at the Hokkaido facility, suggests the Abyss Collective's objectives are more complex than simple anti-KANSEN terrorism. Naruto observed, they appear to be pursuing specific applications of Biju-derived energy for purposes that concern even the energy itself. A troubling tactical scenario, Amagi agreed, particularly given the political complications within the Sakura Empire. If elements within our Admiralty are providing support or resources for these activities, traditional security protocols may be compromised. Which is why Admiral Mikasa arranged this secure location, Naruto noted. He clearly suspects high-level infiltration within the command structure. Yes, Amagi confirmed. The Admiral's position as elder statesman provides certain protections, but his direct authority is limited by retirement protocols. His actions represent significant personal risk, evidence of how seriously he views the threat. Quote, they discussed strategic implications for several hours, analyzing potential connections between the Abyss Collective's activities, drive, Mizuno's apparent objectives, and the political factions within the Sakura Empire. Throughout their conversation, Naruto observed Amagi's tactical processing displaying the enhanced capabilities she had described, connections forming more rapidly, analysis incorporating more variables, conclusions reaching deeper implications. As evening approached, they established monitoring systems that would track Amagi's Candida throughout the night while allowing necessary rest. The harmonization process had been energetically demanding for both of them, Naruto feeling the familiar drain of extensive chakra use, Amagi experiencing the natural fatigue of systems undergoing significant reconfiguration. You should rest, Naruto advised as the monitoring setup was completed. The harmonization process requires energy to stabilize fully, and recovery proceeds more efficiently during sleep cycles. Logical recommendation, she acknowledged. Though I find my tactical systems unusually active despite physical fatigue, processing possibilities at rates that would normally require a common effect during initial harmonization, Naruto explained. Your consciousness is adapting to new information pathways created by the energy integration. The heightened activity should normalize as your systems establish equilibrium. Amagi nodded in understanding. I've arranged separate accommodations within the retreat complex. The attendants have been instructed to maintain privacy protocols while ensuring necessary comforts are provided. As they prepared to retire for the evening, Amagi paused, her expression thoughtful. Commander, Naruto, she corrected herself, the personal address still unfamiliar on her lips. During the harmonization, I experienced something beyond tactical enhancement or physical restoration, a perspective that transcends conventional parameters. What kind of perspective? He asked, recognizing the significance of her raising such a personal observation. Purpose beyond function, she replied carefully. KANSEN are created for specific operational objectives, tactical processing, in my case. Our value is measured through effectiveness in fulfilling designated roles. She paused, seeming to search for precise phrasing. The harmonized energy suggests possibility of existence valued for itself, not merely for utility provided. This philosophical observation, particularly coming from someone whose identity was so thoroughly defined by tactical function, revealed the profound nature of the transformation occurring within Amagi's consciousness. She was questioning not just how she operated, but why she existed, the fundamental purpose that gave meaning to her being. That perspective, Naruto said gently, is perhaps the most important aspect of true harmonization. When I finally achieved balance with Kurama, it wasn't merely about power or utility, but about recognizing each other's essential worth beyond what either could provide. Amagi considered this with characteristic thoroughness. An unfamiliar framework for evaluation, she admitted. My tactical systems are designed to assess value through operational effectiveness and strategic advantage. Worth independent of function represents conceptual expansion, a worthy expansion, Naruto suggested, and one that perhaps reflects your true nature more accurately than the limited parameters your creators envisioned. A small smile touched her lips, more genuine than the calculated expressions she typically employed in diplomatic settings. A tactically sound observation, she acknowledged, the formal acing belied by the warmth in her amber eyes. Thank you, Naruto, for both the technical intervention and the philosophical perspective. With that, she departed to her assigned quarters, moving with noticeably improved grace compared to her condition that morning. Naruto watched her go, reflecting on the day's developments with both professional satisfaction and personal contemplation. The successful harmonization represented significant progress in addressing Amagi's deteriorating condition, a technical achievement with important tactical implications given her value as the Sakura Empire's premier strategist. But beyond these practical considerations, the experience had revealed unexpected connections and possibilities that transcended conventional understanding of KANSEN existence. As he retired to his own quarters, Naruto found himself considering the broader implications of what they had discovered. The apparent use of authentic Biju chakra fragments in Amagi's creation, the connection to Dr. Mizuno and the Abyss Collective's activities, the problematic energy signature Amagi had sensed, all suggested a conspiracy more complex and potentially more dangerous than initially assessed. Tomorrow would bring necessary continuation of Amagi's monitoring and further strategic discussion regarding the Abyss Collective's objectives. But for now, as cherry blossoms drifted past his window in the gentle evening breeze, Naruto allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction in having helped someone who carried a burden similar to what he had once borne, the weight of containing power that was both gift and curse. Blessing and burden. In this new world, so different from the shinobi era of his origin, some patterns remained consistent: the value of harmony over control, the importance of acknowledging the worth of all beings beyond their utility, and the fundamental truth that no one should face their greatest challenges alone. As night fell over the Imperial retreat, T.H.S.A. thoughts accompanied Naruto into restful sleep, a tactician pause before the next phase of an increasingly complex campaign. Chapter 3 End. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.